amazing product that we've given away for free on Phlearn, and they've been just really great for the entire process. And if they give us away product or not, I think they make the best bags out there. So we love them.
Fantastic. We love Lowepro 2 here at Creative Live, and we are excited to give away, like I said, a Passport Sling 2, which is a $75 value, and that is going to go to @ShadeK on Twitter. And the quote that they tweeted out was, "Don't be afraid to change things as you go along and take suggestions from people you trust," which is wonderful advice. So I'm going to pass this along to you and let you take over.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just don't take suggestions from people you don't trust, because that'll probably happen too. All right, guys, welcome to part 2. As you can see, there's a giant pool of quote-unquote milk in front of me, which is just amazing that this happened in 45 minutes during our lunch break. Everything is completely changed, and we've got our giant pool of liquid. Now, in the first part, we talked about how it was going to be, basically the concept was, we've got our subject looking into a cereal bowl. If you guys remember from the sketch earlier this morning, which seems like 7 hours ago, but it was not that long ago, we photographed that part of the image already, and now we're on to the composite. So we basically figured out that we'd have to bring our subject into the first part of the image, and then we're going to be doing, oh, there's our sketch, right on. And then what we're going to be doing is basically putting our subject into what is going to be a giant quote-unquote cereal bowl. And in this case, it's going to be this giant pool of liquid. So we've got a kiddie pool, basically filled it with water. I didn't do any of it, so mad props to all the 15 people who got this done. It was amazing. And we used evaporated. Does anyone maybe could hand me the evaporated milk? Oh, it's got a logo on it. We can't show you that. Never mind. You're not going to see what we used. It's just like powdered evaporated milk. It's Big K brand, just like the cereal we used earlier. But anyway, so a lot of water and sprinkled that in to this image, to the pool. So basically what we're going to be doing now is we thought it'd be a really good teaching point for us to kind of show you guys how we're going to be matching the lighting and everything like that from the original shot to this pool. So we're starting completely from scratch, and we're going to be moving lighting around and everything like that during this shoot. And we're also going to be talking about a couple of things that we're going to be kind of pulling together. Now, over the break, I also went through and kind of picked the images that I thought were the best representation of the first segment. And if we could, let's filter those and do that by 5 stars. Yep, that's awesome. And Mike is the man back there getting all this done. So these are what I thought were the best representations, given what I feel I wanted out of the shot, as well as your guys' advice, which I think we all kind of unanimously agreed, except I apologize. Having the subject not actually looking at the camera, having the subject looking there at the bowl of cereal. So these are the shots that I felt I really love. Each of them is really great, and there are a couple of things that we can kind of think and do whenever we're creating these type of composite. One thing to keep in mind is we can always use certain parts of one image and certain parts of another image. So in my opinion, I really like the interaction with her hand and the bowl of cereal on the bottom left image. Her face is good, but I really like her face in the top right image. I feel like it's looking down, but we can still see enough detail in there, and it's not like at a weird angle. Sometimes, if the face is too far down, you lose some of those details that bring that, human element into it. So those are kind of my favorites. I think that, if this were just me and we had no one else in the room, which is not the case, I would probably use her head from the top right image and place it on the body of the bottom left image. But these are some other images that I really liked. Using this with kind of the dripping in the pool. Over the break, we talked about, the flinging of the cereal was a lot of fun. But in the end, I think everyone was kind of on the same boat, or in the same pool or whatever, when we decided that it would probably be better if she was kind of scooping at him. There'd be a little bit more interaction. So we talked about that in section 1. Maybe, you have one part of the shoot that is fun, but maybe it doesn't wind up making as much sense in the final. So that's kind of what we went after there. So is everyone happy with that? If we combined the top right with the bottom left, does that seem like it works for you guys? Okay, cool. We were going to put it to a vote, and then I don't know. It just unless someone's like, no, let's not do that. Okay, but I think that'll look really good. And then so that's basically what we're getting together. So now that we have that kind of figured out, and it doesn't matter, even if we did decide, tomorrow to do a slightly different facial expression or things like that, the camera in the bowl still didn't move. So the camera angle there is consistent. So now what we need to do when we're actually going to be photographing Jasper in this pool is we need to do a couple things. We need to match our lighting and our camera angle. And we talked about from very early on how that was the most important thing you could do. Match your lighting and match your camera angle, and the composite is going to come together. So how do we match our camera angle? How do we figure it out? And we're going to have a change in scale as well. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about geometry, guys. Is that cool with everyone? All right, so come on over to my cool little chalkboard over here. There are people watching this who are way better at math than I am, by the way. So if you want to call BS on any of this, be my guest. This is just how it works in my head, and it makes sense to me. This is how I kind of figure some things out. So usually not very technically, quote unquote, correct. These are just things that make sense. And you don't have to get all these things completely correct. But basically, here's one point that I want to show you guys, and this is how I figure out a lot of perspective. Okay, so we're going to start off with a simple circle. And looking straight onto the circle, everyone sees a circle, right? You're looking straight onto the circle. Now think of this circle as if you were looking straight down on that bowl of cereal or straight down on this pool. Like if you were straight up on the ceiling looking straight down on it, the jib's getting pretty close. Pretty cool. So if you were looking just about straight down here, it would look like a perfect circle, right? But as you change your angle, and I'm going to actually use this cool chalkboard to change the angle, as I start to change the angle, you guys can see that it's no longer a perfect circle, right? And if I continue to change it even more, it's no longer a perfect circle. It's becoming more and more of an ellipse as I go along. And as I bring it down here, pretty close, it's going to become a straight line. And I'm showing this mostly for you guys in the audience. Is it kind of working? So circle, and then as I continue to go down, not a circle. That's basically how you can calculate things. Now, you can get a little bit more technical with it if you want. So technically, if you divide the width by the height of your circle, as you change, you're going to get a ratio, and that's a ratio of what percentage you're looking at the image. So if this is 90%, you're looking at a circle straight on, and this is 0%. So this is, let's say, a 45-degree angle. Well, if you divide the width by the height, the width should be twice as wide as the height. I'm losing everyone. I can see everyone's faces like, you suck at explaining this. Okay, basically, if you divide the width by the height here, you have a 1-to-1 ratio, right? Like, if this is 1, this is 1, you divide that by 1, you get a 1-to-1 ratio. If I go something at like a 45-degree angle, this becomes shorter in appearance, but this, like the width, will never change. As I go farther and farther down, the width never changes, just the height. So at halfway, your height is going to be half of the distance of your width. Okay, everyone's with me there. Cool. So at halfway, the height is half the distance of the width, which means you're at 45-degree viewing angle if it is exactly half. Now, you don't have to get this perfect, but technically, looking at this bowl of cereal, we can actually calculate the exact angle at which it was viewed by dividing the width by the height, which is really, really cool. So we can see here already, let's just step back over here. Maybe we can see me with one of the screens. We can see here the height is quite a bit smaller than the width, right? So if we were looking at it straight from the top, it would be a 1-to-1 ratio. The farther down you get, the more shallow it's going to get. So this is, just by looking at it, that's about a 30-degree angle. If it were a 1-to-2 ratio, it would be, this would be half the distance or twice the distance. I'm not going to go through and measure it all. You don't really have to do all that sort of thing. But if you did want to do it in Photoshop, you could actually set up a ruler tool and measure out your width and your height, divide the width by the height, and figure out your exact viewing angle. All right, does that make sense? I know there have got to be questions out there on the internet right now. Hopefully I can answer some of them, because people are probably going to be like, that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about?
Arnold Schwarzenegger is apparently watching, and Arnold says that this is worse than the inverse square law.
The worse than the inverse square law. Okay.
So maybe if you want to go over it just one more time.
Okay. Just let's forget all of the mathematics. Just think, if you're looking at a circle straight on, it's going to look like this. If you're looking at it from the side, it's going to look like this. So if the circle that you're looking at is too skinny and you need it to be, if you need it to be wider, just raise your camera angle and you're going to be looking at it more like this. Continue to raise your camera angle, you're going to look more like this, and continue to raise your camera angle, you're going to look like that. So all I need to do with my camera is make sure that the angle is somewhat similar to what's going on here. And if it's too narrow, I know that I need to raise my camera and it's going to look like this. If it's not narrow enough, I need to lower my camera. Does that make sense in like the final? Okay, I hope it's going to come through. Everyone's like, no, that still doesn't make sense. But basically, that's how we're going to like view this. Is like, you know, I'm not looking at it straight up from the top, but I'm not directly from the side. So basically, I need to come at an angle that's with this pool. I can't be looking at it from. There's a table there. Okay, so if I'm looking at this pool from this angle, this is like close to the side. And this is looking something like this, right? So at this point, the height is very shallow and the width is very large. So obviously, this is the wrong angle because this does not match this. If I was coming from almost the top, it would be, you know, a 1-to-1 ratio, and that's not going to work either. So basically, all this talk is to figure out what we need to do is view it at about an angle, something like right over here, to make it look like the same proportion as our cereal bowl. Okay, and if we did want to measure everything out, we can, but it sounds like math is not what everyone wants to do today, so we're not going to measure it out. But for anyone who is interested in math, you can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out your correct angles if you wanted to.
A couple people, Arnold Schwarzenegger came back and said that that does make sense, thanks. And by chance says, love the math, and says you were doing great. Okay, perfect. So, with the Pythagorean theorem, if you guys are interested, it's basically like with a triangle, you can a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So you can figure out if I need to be 10 feet away from this pool and I'm going to be 8 feet up, then that's going to give me an exact 45-degree viewing angle. So if you needed to figure out your angles perfectly, you totally could. With some type of compositing, that is very important. With this type, because we're just putting them in a giant pool of white liquid, it's not as important. We're just going to use our eye and we're going to do rough compositing here on the set. But if you did need to do it exactly, you could do it then as well. So we do have somebody who logged in and says, I am a mathematician, and he is right. So
what? That is awesome. Very, very cool. Because I was just trying to think about one day how to composite things together and how to figure out angles from something you're looking at. And that's how it just made sense to me. So this was just something that I figured out, and I'm glad to know that it actually is correct. So very, very cool. So everyone understands that now, basically? Okay, cool. So all that talk was basically hoping to answer the question of, hey, do you just look at it and say, does it look right or not? Which a lot of people, when they're doing compositing or different types of things, they look at it and say, yeah, that looks right or not. Some people are not as good as that. So if you're one of those people who can't just look at something and tell it's right or not, that's kind of like a technique or a method or a little bit of math that you can use to make sure that you're actually doing it correct. So you don't have to trust your judgment. And I am one of those people, to be totally honest. I'm a person, it might seem like I can just look at something and tell if it's right or not, but I always need those little methods to check if I'm actually right or not. What we're actually going to be doing now is we're going to be photographing this pool, and I'm going to match it, basically taking my photographs from what I think is going to be about the right angle, and we're going to be matching that basically during the actual photo shoot. So before our subject comes into the pool or anything like that, the first thing I want to do is match my camera angle, and the next thing I'm going to do is match my lighting. All right, so I'm going to start off by matching the camera angle. Basically what I'd like to do is, I think this is about right. It might not be, but this is part of the entire process, and rather than just getting it all figured out over lunch, there we go, perfect. Thank you, John. We're going to actually do it live so you guys can see it. This is probably not going to be the most exciting thing you've ever seen. It's like, oh, it needs to come down one millimeter. There we go. And I had my focal length. Our focal length, by the way, is going to stay the same. We're going to still use 50 millimeters here. And I'm going to go ahead and manually focus on the outside in this about the same place as where my cereal bowl was. There we go. And I'm going to take a picture. Now, our lighting is not technically correct at this point. The lighting is just completely off. Maybe it'll wind up pulling up. But the lighting I'm not so interested at this point. What I'm more interested in is the camera angle that we're actually shooting at. So what I'm going to, whenever this gets basically taken care of, we got a couple technical things. Whenever that gets taken care of, I'm going to open up these two images. So the image of our subject, Sarah, and the image that I just shot right here straight out of the camera, and I'm going to compare my camera angles there. So this is something that I would actually do on set as I was shooting. So I can just make sure, like before we actually get into the photo shoot, so I can make sure that my camera angles are the same. All right, cool, and it'll take a little bit. I think we got, while this happens, we probably got a second or two for some questions, if you guys have any here in the audience. Or at home.
I do love talking about all of this math and everything. Rich Gill says, it just goes to show that you need to put a lot of thought into your image and not just throw it together.
That's exactly right. And I think that hopefully everyone's been, throughout the day and throughout the weekend, the whole point is like, you don't have to be a Photoshop genius. Like, that's not the point. You just need to have like a good plan of what you want, which starts with a sketch and then putting all these pieces together. So once you have your plan, then you kind of outline what those individual points are, which we put on the whiteboard earlier. And now we're just kind of like taking through each one of these.
So we do have a couple questions in general about this. So how would, like when you're looking at the perspective shift, how would that work on non-circular items, or if you're just shooting a person, for instance?
That's a really good question. So if you're just shooting a person, and I have done this in my own work many different times. This is a good example. A perfect circle fits inside of a perfect square. So if you do need to have a square on the ground, or let's say we have a grid like this floor here, you could actually map out a perfect square on this floor pretty easily because we have horizontal and vertical lines. Even if you already had the image, you could map out a distance here between creating a perfect square on the ground, and then you could create a circle in that perfect square. If you're photographing a person, you can use this exact same technique. However, instead of a giant pool, what you would want to do is put a circle, have a person stand on a perfect circle, and then you can calculate the angle at which you're photographing the person and make sure that it's perfect as well. So it doesn't have to be a pool, but the idea of using a circle just gives you the ability to divide your width by the height. So hopefully we'll have a Compositing 102 class when I can go over all this in much more depth, and we can do some very, very hard stuff. Like this image you guys see here uses a lot of very difficult compositing techniques. A lot of math was required, even 3D modeling in this image as well. But today, it's just one circle equals another circle.
All right, Aaron, one more question from the internet from Joshua. He is asking, do the lights change size to match the scale of the set? Now, since we're on a much larger scale, what did you take into account when setting all the lights back up?
That is a great question. And after we dial in our angle, we are going to be focusing directly on the lighting. But he's totally right. When you change scale, so this is supposed to be what's the size of a cereal box or cereal bowl, which is pretty small. As it gets larger, your light sources have to get larger as well. Now, keep in mind, originally, the light that was our cross light that was kind of coming from the side, do you guys remember that was in like an 11-inch reflector? Instead of a small reflector, we're using both of these soft boxes because we're trying to match basically the apparent light size. So as our bowl, technically, this is a giant cereal bowl. Just think of it like a giant cereal bowl. As our bowl gets a lot larger, so do our light sources. So we're going to be using two large soft boxes here instead of that small light source. And we're not using the V-flats or anything like that. Instead, what we're going to be doing is firing these lights. Oh, there we go, perfect. Is firing these lights into the ceiling. We've got a pretty high ceiling here, but it's going to fire these lights into the ceiling. Remember, like the water splash analogy, it's going to splash that light, come on back down, and fill the area with light. So where before we used a V-flat for fill light, now we're just going to use the ceiling.
That's great. So Dale R. Photo says, if the milk in that pool is not the same milk as the milk from the bowl, do you worry about there being differences in color between the two? And if so, how would you worry about that?
Okay, cool. That is a good question, and it's probably not the same exact color. Now, we're getting pretty close here. We're not using water. We're not using, chocolate milk. We're getting pretty close here. So that part comes in Photoshop. If we're like, 20 or 30% there, we can do the rest in Photoshop. So you don't have to get these like perfect. What you want to get them is pretty close. So if you do need to do anything in Photoshop, we're making our job a lot easier in Photoshop. But let's say this is just a little bit darker. In Photoshop, I can use a curves adjustment layer and just brighten it up a little bit. If it's too saturated, I can use a hue saturation and bring that down a little bit. So these sort of things we can definitely take care of in Photoshop after the fact. Good question.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is back again, asking
Nice.
if you find the angles of your image don't match when you get to Photoshop. Do you use warp or change perspective of one of the images?
Good question. In this case, if you do have control over the whole shoot, which in this case we do, your perspective should match. If your perspective doesn't match by the time you get into Photoshop, then you didn't pay attention to this segment of the course, because I'm going to show you how to match perspectives. If, for instance, you're working with an image that you just didn't have control over and you have to like force match perspectives, in that case you can try using warp, but in my opinion, warp is really tough, because let's say you're looking at me straight on, you can see my face, you can't see the top of my head, right? But if you change perspective, let's say I get really low, now you guys can see the top of my head, right? But the warp tool is not ever going to allow you to be able to see the top of someone's head if you have a two-dimensional image. So it'll get you a little bit there, but the best way to do it by far is just to get it right in camera. Cool. All right, are we ready to start matching this? Okay, perfect. Now this will be a little bit of a test because let's see, there's just I'm not sure how to actually, I need these pulled up in Photoshop so I could actually bring this over top of the images with Sarah.
Are you going to work on it over here?
Yeah, that was the goal.
We're getting that.
You should be able to pull it up yourself.
Okay, cool.
I don't have anything on this monitor.
No problem. Okay, so if for instance, while we get all this figured out, you're kind of looking at this, maybe while we're getting it figured out, we can look at this and pull this up side by side. Oh, never mind. Mike is in here, and he was the one who would do that anyway. So
Mike's walking in, and he's got duct tape.
he's got duct
Watch
tape.
out.
Oh, gaffer tape. We're going to fix it. Okay, so I don't want to say use your memory, but ideally we would be able to see this and the other image side by side if that's all we had. And the best way to do it is what we're going to be doing in a second, where I'm actually going to bring these two images together in Photoshop and lower the opacity of this one over top of the other one, and then we can actually see the camera angle.
Mike has a really great question. Do you always shoot 1 point perspective?
1 point perspective. That's a really good question. Can you ask Mike to clarify that a little bit?
I think just shooting for this composite, all the elements that you're shooting is from one perspective, and so you're matching the shot up. And so I think he's asking, do you ever change that up? Do you ever change your perspective on one of the key elements for a different layer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It depends on where the final image is going to go, and it depends on the perspective of the original image. Technically, with perspective, it's a rule, and you can't really break perspective. If you think of MC Escher, for instance, he has a lot of perspective shifts, but he still follows all of the rules. If you start breaking perspective rules, things start to not look real. And I can show you that basically in a pretty quick example in just a little bit. But generally, you do want to stick with the same perspective if you can. I would always recommend it. And I'll show you what it looks like when you don't stick with the same perspective in just a minute, and hopefully that'll clear that question up. Good question.
Great. Are we ready to go there, John, or are we going to do one more question?
Both in Photoshop, so we can both.
So one last question, just about a couple different questions about ever thought of using an angle gauge. Why not use the level in the camera to keep the angles correct? Do you ever use outside tools beyond just your eye and Photoshop?
Good question. I'm using a 5D Mark II, which does not have a level gauge. The 5D Mark III and I believe the 7D do. So that's a pretty nice tool if you have access to those. The other interesting thing about using an angle gauge, if you do have control over all your elements in a photo, an angle gauge would be, it would be a great tool. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have a background image that you didn't photograph. That's for a different type of compositing, which we'll get to at a later date. But sometimes you don't have that. And then what you have to do is calculate the perspective of that photograph using the rules that I talked about today. And once you can calculate the perspective of that photograph, then you can match it in the photographs that you take. So this is a little bit more universal, albeit more work, but it will work with multiple different types of compositing. Good question.
Beautiful. And it looks like we're good to go.
Perfect. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to just have a seat, and we're going to kind of put this together real quick. And so basically our goal here, and this is something that I would be doing on, on set as we were, photographing this pool. I wanted to make sure you guys were here for this process. It's probably not the most exciting thing to look at, but it's very important. So we have basically the entire pool in this layer 0, and John has been good enough to lower the opacity for us. So we can see kind of both of our perspectives. Now, my goal here is to transform this pool to where it's about the same size as the bowl. I don't want to use a nonlinear transform. I want to make sure my proportions are maintained. So as I make it smaller, I'm not changing the width or the height. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click and drag in and just make this a little bit smaller. And my goal here is to make this about the size of our cereal bowl. There we go. All right, and we're just going to hit enter there. And so there's about the size of our cereal bowl. So judging, given that both of these are perfect circles, are they matching up? No. And I'm just going to come right around here, and this is how we're going to figure it out. Okay, so our cereal bowl is a perfect circle, and this is technically a perfect circle too, but they're not matching up. They're not that far off, but they're not matching. Now, given all that fun stuff that we talked about earlier, can anyone tell me what we need to do to our camera angle in order to make it match up, or why it doesn't match up here? Come lower and come back. Okay, so tell me why it needs to come lower and come back.
Make sure to grab a mic.
Because the pool is narrower than the bowl at this point, and we need to change our angle or the distance to make it look wider.
Right. Okay, perfect. So we need to make it look like, so it's all width divided by height at this point. So right now, the width of the cereal bowl divided by the height of the cereal bowl is smaller than the width of the pool divided by the height of the pool. In other words, we're at a higher angle of the pool. I'm seeing it more round. The pool in this image is more round than the cereal bowl in this image, which is exactly what you were saying, right? So in order for the pool to be less round, basically I have to bring my camera angle down. So I'm looking at it like this. I need to bring my camera angle so I'm looking at it like this, and it's going to be less round. So basically that's what we're figuring out. We're figuring out now this is going to be less round. So all that stuff we talked about earlier is just helping us to decide whether the camera needs to come up or down. And in this case, we know it needs to come down because I need to look at it from less at the top. All right, cool. Is everyone good? I promise we're going to get into the fun stuff soon. This is like all the super boring stuff that is incredibly important. And if you get all this stuff right, everything else is so easy. But this is definitely important. John, would you mind lowering? Sorry, it's not my tripod, and I don't even know how to work this one. Folks at Creative Live have amazing tripods that I don't know how to work. Let's bring it down maybe a little bit more. So what we're going to do is, all right, and I'm going to make Mike's jobs a little bit harder, but as we bring this down, we're going to take another photograph and basically do the same thing. Now, again, you guys don't have to get this exactly right. We're not trying to like fit this person into a scene where like they're actually going to be like interacting with different things. That's a relatively hard composite to do. This person is floating in a white circle of liquid. So if you get your angle like slightly off, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but you do want to get it pretty close.
Maui Photo is wondering whether the image resolution makes a difference at all. He says that I'm finding that when I take an object that I've shot full frame and then shrink it down to fit another image, that it seems a little too sharp compared to what is being replaced.
Totally great point. It is going to be too sharp. The reason is you're just, if something's this small in the frame, you're not going to be getting a lot of resolution in there. There are a lot of things that you can do to kind of combat that in Photoshop. And if that's the case with this final image, we are going to be doing that. Keep in mind, we did focus on the cereal bowl, so focus isn't something we really have to worry about. But if it becomes too sharp, there are some really cool tricks you can do. I'm sure you guys have sampled things down really small and then tried to bring them back up and you lose detail. Have you guys, or just a normal size image, you try to make large and it loses detail? You can use that exact same technique on these images. If the guy was too well detailed, you could just sample him, you could make him really small and then make him larger and it would lose detail, which most of the time is a bad thing, but in this case, that would actually be exactly what you wanted, which is kind of cool. Let's take another image. Oh, John's gonna do it, thank you.
All right, some lazy guy is asking, how is the angle so important right now, especially when you're going to crop out the person from the white back group for the final image?
Exactly, great point. Well, earlier I talked about like being able to see the top of my head or the bottom of my head and things like that. That's going to translate directly when we have the image actually in place. So if I'm looking too far above our subject, it's going to look, even though they're in the cereal bowl, it's going to look like I'm looking down at my subject in the bowl, but straight forward at my subject in accordance to the whole picture. So that's the perspective change that you don't want to happen. If we're a few degrees off, it's not going to be the end of the world. I just wanted to show you guys how to get really, really close.
And just for people who may not know exactly what you're doing, what John is doing in Photoshop right now, can you speak to that really quickly?
Yeah, of course. What John's doing, and John, thank you for doing my job. What John's doing is taking these photos that we just took. So this is the photo that we just took after lowering the height of the camera, which is what we said we needed to do. Now we're going to bring that over top of the cereal bowl and lower the opacity on that layer. Then we're going to shrink that down, and now with a lowered perspective, we're going to see how that compares to the angle of the cereal bowl, which John's just doing it all right now, which is awesome. There we go. And so we can kind of see, does this wind up matching a little bit better? If if it needs to be rotated, that's not a big deal because that's just the camera rotating as well. All right. What do we think, John? All right. Might need to be rotated a little bit more. There we go. And then bring it up and your Z-axis a little over here. Yeah. There we go. I think we're getting pretty close. Do you want me to take over for just a second?
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so basically what we're doing now is making sure that it all does in fact match up. And that's what our end goal is. So we're going to use the interior diameter. Let me just turn off snapping here. We're going to use the interior diameter of our little shallow pool here. And I'm going to hit Command T. Let's bring our little control point right over there to where it matches. And then we're going to make it either larger or smaller. All right. So our interior diameter of the pool is what we should be matching. If you want to do this so where you're not, it's kind of confusing, right? Looking at this with two different opacities here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a new layer, and I'm going to use my marquee tool to just select out. There we go. That's about the ellipse of the bowl. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. I'm going to hit Shift Delete, and I'm going to just fill this with, let's fill this with a nice red, something like that. There we go. So as long as that shape is, there we go. As long as that shape is echoed in the shape of our bowl, excuse me, move the wrong layer there. Sorry, auto select is on. Let's just turn that off. As long as that shape is echoed with our pool, then we're good. All right, and what do you guys think if I just rotate that around? It's getting pretty close. I think we could still come down a little bit because this is still more round than our pool. And everyone can see that our pool. So if I hit Command T and I squish this down a little bit, we can see that does in fact fit better in there, right? So our angle is still a little bit too high on the pool, which just means we need to lower our tripod down a little bit in height. All right, cool. So we're gonna do, did it come down a little bit lower? Perfect. All right, let's try that again. Third time should be a charm. And again, you don't have to, in this case, this is not something, actually, John, you want to take over for me? Because I don't know what you were just doing, and you did a good job. This isn't something that you have to get like exactly right in this exact case. I just want to make sure that everyone knows how to get it right. So our angles first, and then we're going to do the lighting. You guys wanted me to do this live. I warned you it would be boring.
This is something that you will do. I mean, you will work to get this right on a shoot.
Most definitely. Yeah, I will definitely do this on a shoot. If it is something like this, where I'm photographing one element or another, usually it'll just be me in the camera working in it. It takes 10 or 15 minutes to get this right. Usually the models are taking a break. This would happen at lunch or something like that. No one needs to be like standing around you watching you calculate all your angles. Like that's not really that important. But this is definitely something that would happen during a photo shoot, because you just don't want to get into Photoshop and then realize when you're in Photoshop. Oh, there we go. That's a great idea, John. You don't want to get into Photoshop and then realize, like after the fact, that like, oh, you know what? My camera angle is not at all right here. Cool. And I think if we rotate that counterclockwise just a couple degrees, we're getting really close. Oh. Yeah, the control point moved. So yeah, this is something that I would totally do during a photo shoot, but I would expect no one to be paying any attention to me. So every photo shoot that I've done this on, probably no one has noticed this is what I'm doing. I'm just like, all right, take a break, go get some sodas or take some lunch for a couple minutes. I'm gonna go dork out with some camera angles.
Do you ever do this on location without a computer?
Without a computer, no. Just because this process, what John is doing right now, is extremely important. And we can see actually right here, I think we're good. Like we're probably 1 or 2 degrees off, but it looks a lot better. Maybe can we compare this, John, to layer 0? Oh, sorry. I'm asking a lot of you. But if we compare the most recent shot, which is that one, to layer 0. So if we want to just turn that one invisible and then turn, oh yeah, it's, you can't see it, can you? All right, here we go.
There we go.
There we go.
See, we have layer 0 and this one.
And let's turn that red guy on as well. So let's turn the topmost layer off. There we go. Let's bring, there we go too. Okay, so we can see here from where we started off, and there we go, and that's where we ended. So we can see, I mean, that's the practical application. We figured out exactly where we needed to be. We knew that we needed to lower our camera angle by that same theory, and then we actually did it. So that is the end of figuring out your camera angle for perspective, and now we're actually just getting ready to start matching our lighting. Cool. Was that fun? I mean, that probably wasn't that fun, but did you guys learn anything? Okay, cool. Well, that's the most important thing that we learned.
Maui Photo says, please let them know that this is not boring. On the contrary, it's fascinating.
Yes! You are a lot like me, Maui Photo. I love this stuff. But I've tried to explain it to some people and they're like, but it's really cool. These are like the cool little techniques that are gonna help you do your job a lot better. And just kind of thinking about these things really does help out. So we have our camera angle in place. What that means is our camera, we do not want to move. So for the rest of this photo shoot, our camera is going to stay in the exact same place. This pool is going to stay in the same place. It's like 800 pounds, so it's definitely not going to move. And now we're going to worry about matching our lighting. So our lighting, let's go ahead and John, if you want to, let's start off with our fill lights. So we're going to punch these lights into the ceiling, and they're both on? Okay, cool. So we're going to start matching our lighting, and you guys are going to be here for the entire process. We're using Pocket Wizards in this case, and basically we're just going to turn these on and make sure they're firing directly into the ceiling, and that's going to provide our fill light, and then there we go.
And these are the same alien bees you were using earlier?
Exactly. All right, is that Einstein firing right there? Perfect. Okay, so that's just me hitting the test button on the camera, and now I'm going to take a picture. And our focus is again locked. I don't necessarily need.
We have lowered the camera though, so you may want to refocus.
Oh, we have lowered the camera. Good point. And I don't need this stepping stool anymore. Perfect. So that's a great example. You know, me just like kind of using my, like, you know, what I think would match the camera angle. I thought we needed to be a lot higher, but it turns out this is actually the right camera angle. So it's just a really good way to, you know, you don't have to guess anymore. Now we actually know what we're doing. Hopefully, anyway. That's the goal. Okay, I am going to refocus, and to do that, I'm going to try to move my camera as little up and down as I can. So I'm just going to try to move it to the right a little bit, because the up and down is going to determine my angle. So I don't want to change that if I can avoid it. All right, and now we're actually going to be matching our lighting. Perfect. So we've refocused and we're matching our lighting. So what I want to make sure we're doing is basically getting this, getting our fill light in, and then we're going to bring in our hot lights. So if you want to, let's go ahead and turn those on as well, John. All right, so the goal here is basically to make this giant pool of liquid look a lot like the small pool of liquid. All right, and let's just, oh, I turned autofocus back on.
Everything is on full now.
It's on full? Okay, let's go ahead and fire it and see what we see. All right, cool. So this is, basically I would be doing this as I'm shooting. I would be doing all this stuff and continuing to bring it back into Photoshop. So we matched our camera angle. Now we would continue to bring this back into Photoshop over and over and over again until the lighting is matched. It depends on how patient you guys are, or how thorough we want to be with that as well. Okay, can we bring the height down of those just a little bit? So what I also want to match is, maybe in Lightroom, Mike can pull up the image of the cereal bowl. There we go. So there are a couple things that I'm looking at in this image of the cereal bowl. There's a shadow from the rim of the cereal bowl that we can actually see in the white liquid. So I want to make sure the height of these lights pretty much matches that. If I can basically imitate a lot of these shadows in this giant pool of liquid, then we know our lighting is matched as well. So we can look at these maybe side by side. If Mike, you can pull this up along with maybe the image that we just shot side by side, and then here in the audience we can kind of just say what needs to happen. So what do you guys see that's wrong here? We'll start with Todd.
It's too bright.
It's too bright. It's way too bright, isn't it? Okay, so we have a couple things that I can do here. I can lower the power of all of my lights if I wanted to do that, or I can just change the power. I can change some settings in my camera. So I'm shooting at f14. If I wanted to shoot at something like f16, I could do that too. So let's try that. Let's go to f18 and see that. There we go. And we can, maybe if we can compare these again. Okay, perfect. So we can see it definitely is getting a little bit better. It's probably still a little bit too bright, right? So what we're going to do is let's lower the power of our fills just a little bit. I'll take care of this one, John, if you want to take care of that. I went down about a stop. If you want to come down maybe a half a stop on both of those.
On these Einsteins, do you have to dump the power when you make your adjustment settings?
Good question. It'll usually dump after a second or so anyway, so the time in which I'm traveled there and come back. There we go. And I recommend taking regular dumps just to keep things flowing naturally. Okay, so this looks good. We're already getting better. Now, there are a couple of things that, okay, so Todd mentioned it was too bright, which I think we've already worked on solving that. Now, the second thing that we want to focus on is, well, there are two things. First is we're getting a reflection from the actual backside of the pool there in the bowl of cereal. Now, I think once Jasper gets in here and it starts to move and things like that, and I cut him out, I don't think that's going to wind up being a huge deal. The second thing is the shadow that we see on the left side of the bowl. Maybe it's a little bit let's see, I think these need to come back up in height a little bit, right? So the shadow kind of enters the pool a little bit more. Also, we have a transparent material here, which is basically not giving us as harsh of a shadow as if this were opaque. So we have a couple options there. We can just kind of like go with it and see how close we can match it, or we could try to like put some black tape on this side, which would make it a little bit more transparent. What do you guys want to go with?
Option 3.
What's that?
Can we just do it in Photoshop? Can we just darken it down?
What's that?
Can we darken it in Photoshop after the fact?
Yes, we can definitely darken in Photoshop. And the third thing which you'll probably see is we're getting a color cast. Because there is some blue color here in the pool, it's actually casting that blue color onto the milk. And that's something which we can take care of in Photoshop. We could use a hue saturation and kind of drag that down as well. All right, so we're getting pretty close, guys. And then the fun starts to happen. Now, if you guys were doing something like this for a client, let's say that this was your idea and you were pitching it to a client, what I would recommend is doing this sort of thing like the day before the shoot. So maybe separate these shoots, maybe separate out the shots by a day. So it's going to be a 2-day shoot. You finish up what you were doing with Sarah on day 1, go ahead and prep all this, and then invite the client back in with all the lighting and everything set up so that they don't have to be there for this process. I want you guys here for this process because you're supposed to be learning about it, but in the end, like the client doesn't necessarily have to be there.
I'm going to switch to one light here.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to need the power cord for the rim light.
Power cord for the rim light. Okay, cool. And the third light is the rim light, which we may or may we may include or we may not include. If you can remember on Sarah, there was a rim light to the camera right, which was kind of lighting that side of her. The one reason why we might not wind up including it is if her arm, which I think it is blocking the rim light from even hitting the cereal bowl, then it doesn't make sense to have the rim in the cereal bowl as well because her arm will be blocking it. So what do you guys think? Can you see the rim in the cereal bowl or not? I can't see it on the rim of the cereal bowl itself. So maybe we don't even have to worry about it. That answers our question. Cool. All right. So much fun. Matching camera and lighting angles for 7 hours. With Aaron Nace. All right, well, I think we've come to a consensus. We're pretty dang close. And honestly, this is about as close as I would get. If you needed to get a little bit closer, we've already said how maybe I would tape this up a little bit to make this a little bit more of an opaque material. You could even tape the insides of it to not get a color cast. But I think we're ready to go ahead. If there aren't any more questions, or if you guys want to take a break, I think we're ready to start actually shooting, which is what we're all here to do.
Are we shooting during this segment, or are we taking a break first? We're going to shoot during the segment, so let's go ahead and just jump right in. Literally.
Right on. Literally jump right in. Right on. Okay, cool. So as we shoot, we're going to keep in mind a couple of things. Jasper, if you want to go ahead and come in. Right on. Welcome. This is Jasper, everybody.
Hello.
And so you're going to be in that image on the left. Maybe not that exact one, but something pretty close. So keep in mind, that's our camera angle here. You're going to be like pretty much in the middle here. We got a little like a donut for you to kind of like float in, which is pretty awesome. It's a Fruit Loopy. And so keep in mind your subject here, as we do this, is going to be Sarah, and she's right about here, kind of like looking into the bowl. So you're going to be interacting with her, kind of like floating in the pool. So
Perfect.
yeah, we ready to go?
I am.
All right, it's a little bit cold, I think, but
I've already been warned.
you've been warned? Okay. We're going to start. How bad is it?
The beach in Florida in January.
Oh, okay.
It's not bad.
Could be worse. Perfect. So we're going to use the pink side up. Yep. Pink side up. And there are a couple options that we have here. If it works out size-wise, if we wanted to make Jasper really small, we could actually turn this into a Fruit Loopy in the end, which I think might be cool. But that would mean he'd have to get very small, or the Fruit Loopies in the bowl would have to get very big. So that might be awkward, or we could just have him actually in a floaty with other Fruit Loopies. So I'm ready whenever you are.
I'm ready for your guidance.
Okay, perfect. Basically what I want to have you do is kind of sit in it, and so sit back in it, and you're just going to be like hanging out. Basically the goal is for you to be hanging out in the Fruit Loopy.
Floating down the river.
Yeah, floating down the river. Like this is you own this, and there we go. Perfect. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. There we go. Awesome. Take take your time to get comfortable. All right. If we can't use this, we might just have you like float on your back or hang out in a different way or something like that. Okay, perfect. Is it a little too small? I'm waiting for it to like slip out and like fly out and hit hit someone in the face, which would be really fun too.
Depends on if I have an edge.
If you have an edge? Okay, perfect. Good point. Well, let's try it with you holding on to an edge. And, oh, is it a little bit too much?
I don't think so. Depends on, let's see where it goes.
Okay, let's try this. All right, perfect. Maybe could you, there we go. Let's rotate it around that way. Oh, no worries. Perfect. All right, cool. So if you want to take a break and come right back up or get comfortable, what we're going to do is, now that we have you in here, so we've matched our lighting basically without our subject. You're doing awesome. This is going to get really messy, and it's going to get messy and pretty weird, but it should be a lot of fun. It's already really pretty funny. It's awesome. So the goal here, we matched our lighting basically without a subject in it. Now I want to do just what we did in Photoshop earlier, John, if you don't mind, to make sure we're matching our lighting here with our subject actually in the frame. So now we built in time. The reason I wanted to start shooting during this segment as well as the next one is we wanted to make sure we build in time for things like unexpecteds. Like this apparently is not as floaty as maybe we thought it would be. There we go. So that's the image there.
There's been some suggestion if we have a box of some kind that we could put underneath that he could sit on.
There we go.
That
That's
would give
a great
him a little more
suggestion.
stability. I don't know if we do have anything. I'm throwing that out to our producer.
Oh, to hook your
wonderful
feet in.
producer, Lacey.
Good question.
Great
Good
suggestion, Internet.
I know that when we were setting up the pool, there was concern about putting holes in it. So if we do that, let's put that like on a towel or something like that, just to make sure we don't pop the pool, because that would be incredibly funny and incredibly horrible. All right. This is going to be awesome. So what we get to do now is basically decide on how large or how small we want our subject to be in the pool. John, I can probably take it from there if you want me to.
Yep.
Awesome. So we're going to decide now how large or how small we want our subject to be in the pool, and also look to see if the matching does in fact wind up lighting our subject completely. There we go. And what I'm going to do is basically just create a really quick layer mask and then paint with black on my layer mask to make sure that, excuse me. We're going to paint black on our layer mask that basically is just going to take away the area around Jasper here, just to make sure that just the liquid is showing. That's the goal. Now, in the original concept, we didn't have him also, there we go. We didn't have him like holding the outsides of anything. Let me just turn snapping back off. We didn't have him holding the outside of any pool or anything like that. So if we do in fact need him to be holding the outside rim for stability, we're going to have to change just a couple of things. We're going to have to change, there we go. Things like maybe our camera angle will have to change, as well as, there we go, perspective. All right, so this is doing a relatively rough job. Now, I think we can all see from this, we're still not exactly there, right? This is not, it's just not perfect. All right, but the milk color, I think our exposure actually is pretty good. Besides the shadow that we have over here, if we just turn this off and on, we can see the exposure from the milk here and the exposure from the milk here actually does wind up matching pretty well. All right, and what do we think? Can we bring up the other image of Sarah? I think it was this one. Yeah, I think I want to. Oh no, it wasn't that one either.
I'll go the first one.
What was that?
Maybe the first. No.
This one? Okay. Maybe if I go into Lightroom, we can bring in. There we go, and let's just 5-star that. Okay. Okay, so this is the image I actually want to edit in Photoshop, and then we're going to be using this as the base in which we're going to be putting you into, Jesper. All right, perfect. Okay, are you comfortable like not holding the edge? Do we?
We actually put a milk carton.
Okay.
Milk crate in there to see if that'll help.
Yeah. Do we want to try it?
Yeah, just that to lay on. It's not in the milk, though.
He's a little out of the milk. Okay.
We're going to try it.
Perfect. Let me just clean up everything that we've got going in Photoshop real quick.
Almost. If that pulls back and gives your feet a little bit of room.
All right. It seems like it was working if you're kind of just standing there instead of laying all the way back. If you're almost like sitting in it with your feet, almost like what you're doing right now. Does that work? You can kind of sit up in it. Yeah, like sit forward. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's try a couple shots like that and see how that works. You're like, this is the most weirdest thing I've ever done in my life. Perfect. Okay, can you bring your feet up just a little? There we go. Perfect. And you're going to be kind of like looking up in that direction like, oh God, what's happening? All right. Perfect. And Jasper, we can take a quick break. I just want to make sure the lighting does match from what we're doing here back in camera again. Does anyone have any questions? We're going to get into it and figure out posing and everything in just a minute. But before we do, we just want to be sure that like the composite itself is working. So that's what I'm working on now. Do you have any questions from the internet?
While we wait for the internet to get their questions queued up for you, do everybody here in the studio, do any of you have questions? No? All right, we'll go to the internet then.
So Shoot Me wonders whether it matters that the Fruit Loopy he is floating on is larger than all the real ones.
That's a good point. In the original concept, it only looks like a Fruit Loopy out of chance. It was actually supposed to be just a regular floaty. But it could, there we go. If it works out that we're going to be turning this into a Fruit Loopy in the end, then that's a cool coincidence. But in the original concept, it was not necessarily supposed to be a Fruit Loopy. It was just supposed to be this. And it is because of that size disparity that made it like, either I think the Fruit Loopies are going to have to wind up being too big for it to look real, or Jasper's going to have to be so small in the frame that it's just not really what we want to go for. So that's a really good question. If Fruit Loopies were just naturally bigger, and maybe they are because we kind of invented them for this anyway, so maybe the Fruit Loopies are big.
All right, question about the final composition and changing your aperture. When you just were adjusting the lighting to match, you changed your aperture, and does that at all affect the final product to match up?
Good question. The aperture in this case, because we're not changing, what the aperture would mostly be doing is changing your depth of field. And in this case, going from, I think we went to 13 to 14 or 16, it's not going to be that big of a change in the end. It's going to be a little bit smaller of a change than, if you were going from like f2.8 to like f8, that will be a pretty big change, not only in exposure, but also in your depth of field. At this point, since almost everything is in focus already, it really doesn't wind up making that big of a difference in the end. But ideally, you would want to keep everything the exact same exposure. But in this case, I don't anticipate it being being that big of a problem or like a concern that we'll have. All right, and we're just going to do a very quick Photoshop masking job here. So in doing this, what it's going to help us do is it's going to help us figure out our composite in general. Like is the lighting working, is the camera angle working, that sort of thing. But it's also going to help us, everyone, see like live, like what our goal is going to be here, and also what what poses and things like that might work. So and we can also figure out the sizing of our subject and things like that as well.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes.
If you hired Jasper for the day to model for you, would you bring him in while you're doing the lighting setup, or would you abuse like an assistant or something at that point?
That's a really good question. Generally, you want to use someone who's similar in like build and skin color and everything like that for your lighting setup. So probably I would bring them in during the lighting setup and everything like that. But if it's like just not feasible as far as like money wise goes, then you could just try to find like as close of a person as you could to the final person you're going to wind up putting in there. All right, so we can see camera angle and things like that. I think we should definitely have you, instead of facing towards the camera, maybe laying horizontally. So we were able to figure out quite a bit of stuff here. We've got about 15 minutes, and there we go. I'm glad we started shooting in this section first. All right, now how do we feel? There's still a lot of stuff that we need to kind of like work on in this. But how do you guys feel about like the lighting, for instance? Does the lighting work for you?
The inside of his right thigh seems a little dark.
The inside of his right thigh.
So
okay.
If we could bounce some light back this way. But you said you were going to change his perspective anyway, so that may not matter.
Yeah, he's going to wind up rotating in the pool. The one thing I am trying to make sure we do match is like the light that is coming from this direction. And we can see we do have like a shadow that's actually in the bowl.
That is true.
So I want to make sure that like that shadow continues winds up continuing there as well. But I think maybe we should knock down our fill light just a little bit so his shadow continues to be in the milk as well. So that's a really good question there. So yeah, I think our lighting still needs a little bit of work. Now,
Nakeen says that the shadow needs to move to the left.
The shadow needs to move to the left. In what way?
Good question. Let me get clarity.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think it needs to come from more behind is what they meant by from the left, and I think Nakeen's right about that too. All right, so we're going to go ahead and bring these lights more behind. The other thing which is interesting too, and we talked about camera angle and perspective and everything like that, is whether we want this to look like it was shot wide or shot a little bit longer. So we can get the relatively the same angle, but if Jasper's looking like he's shot on too much of a wide angle, he is towards the bottom of the frame, which is something we want. But if he looks like he's shot too much at a wide angle, then what we might have to do is zoom in on the camera lens a little bit and back the camera lens back out, and that's going to make him look like he's just a little bit more compressed. And that'll keep like his feet from looking like they're so close to the camera and his head looking like it's so far away. Because if he was really that small, he wouldn't be taking up that much space. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Well, already we're really close. We just need to get our lighting a little bit more, and we need to focus a little bit more on getting our bubble or our prop here working, and we'll be good to go. So if we want to, we're going to move these back in this direction a little bit. Thank you, John.
The other comment is that the lighting looks a little harder on him than it is on the milk. Do you agree?
Yes, I totally agree on that. There are a couple things that we can do to fix that. We do have two lights hitting. Yeah, we could come a little bit closer with the light. That's a great idea as well. We want to make sure that these are on this. I guess they're on the same power. Yep.
They're both full.
Okay, perfect. Ideally, if there was not a wall there, what we would use is a couple large V-flats that would be right here. So this is why we're doing it during this segment, but this is like all this problem solving stuff that we're talking about. So if we bring these closer and change the power and everything like that, and it's still not what we want, what we're going to have to do is ditch these soft boxes and put up a couple of V-flats, or fire the light into the wall and have it come back over again. So exactly, these, like all these little things, and that's why it's so important when compositing to kind of like do this rough while you're actually doing the photo shoot, so you can kind of see, is it working while you're shooting, and then you don't have to worry about is it working after you do the shoot. So awesome, good questions. All right, let's try it like this. Do you want to just try like sitting in the pool for a second? We can take this out and then.
Same angle?
Let's see. Sit like kind of facing with your head there and facing your body towards me. Perfect. Yep, and come just a little bit more. Oh, you can just kind of like sit straight up if you want to. Okay. Yep, and come a little bit more. There we go, perfect. All right. What was that?
I brought these down to stop each.
Down to stop each. Okay, perfect. Cool.
Legs, no legs.
That looks good right there. That looks good. Okay, I think we're going to need just a little bit more fill light. So let's see if we can bump the power up. All right. Rotate around towards me just a little bit, Jasper. There we go. Perfect. I think that's looking really good. Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Rotate around towards me just a little bit more if you wouldn't mind. There we go. Perfect. Oh, it would be really cool. We should definitely have you holding a Fruit Loopy, I think, in the end. I think that would be really good. So we'll see about some of those. We can get like a prop, and then in Photoshop I'll make it look like it's a Fruit Loopy.
Or I might be able to get in it.
Get in it?
Too. It might fit over.
That would be pretty cool too. All right. I like that idea.
Can you see the milk carton that's in there
Not really, actually. We can't see it. Okay, so I'm going to bring this back into Photoshop, and then we're going to check on our lighting and everything here again. All right. So the end goal is, once you have your lighting and your camera angles and everything like that matched up, the end goal is basically to be able to just start shooting and have a lot of fun. Like what we did in the first part of our segment was we were able to work with Sarah and just have a lot of fun for the majority of the shoot. The reason is because before the day started, we spent about 30 minutes getting our lighting and our camera angle right. So now what we're doing is, instead of doing that beforehand, we're taking the time to do it and to get it right here. All right, so I'm just doing a really quick composite here, guys. Just kind of like taking this down into size. Jasper, you're awesome. This is already looking so cool. I just love that I get to do stuff like this for a living, by the way. Like, as photographers, we're just really lucky. I mean, this is our job. We get to do amazing, crazy things. And if you have a wild, crazy idea, gosh, it's just really amazing. Compositing is just a really, really cool tool. And to be able to do this, to bring your really crazy ideas to life, and I just think we're really lucky to be able to do this sort of thing. So there we go. And I'm just doing a very rough job. Now, in the actual course section on day 3, we're going to be doing a great job cutting everyone out of their backgrounds and making sure they're seamless and everything is really looking good. At this point, what I'm more interested in is, does it at least roughly match? I think our exposure is just a little bit too bright, especially on the milk. But what do you guys feel about like the milk consistency and everything like that? I think it's pretty good, right? Like it looks like it should be there, which is awesome. All right. Now, if you do need to bring your lightness down just a little bit, I'll show you guys a really cool trick in Photoshop. You can grab a curves adjustment layer. And what I want to do is, let's see, I'm not sure why there we go. Let's just bring that all the way up there. We're just going to bring our brightest point down a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and, there we go. Let's close out all that sort of stuff. And lock this on there. Okay, we're going to bring our brightest point down. I'm going to right click on this to clip this layer to John, which is just going to make it visible only where John is. And now you can see, like, just with this layer, the milk on the bottom like instantly matches the milk from the actual bowl. So that's what we were talking about earlier, is if it's pretty close, you can just do a really quick little layer like this, and that's just going to help out that match just a little bit more. And we can layer mask that away from his body and stuff like that. So it's just a really quick way to help just the milk match, and then we don't have to worry about, does it actually, is the color right or things like that. I believe, was that one of your questions earlier, Todd? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So this is, that's how we take care of it, and it's just super quick and easy. All right, so now we get to figure out, does this work? And what do you think, Jasper?
Jasper's looking much more comfy.
Right? Totally weird and funny and amazing. And so that's the start of our composite. I think maybe you're still a little bit too big, and we don't have a whole lot of interaction going on, but I think as segment 1 for our composite, we managed to get our camera angle great. We managed to get our lighting pretty dang close. I think as long as you stay in the highlights, you're pretty good there. And I think it's a really good segment 1.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is what we've done, folks. This is what just happened. This has kind of been amazing to watch. What are we going to do when we come back?
Perfect. What we're going to be doing when we come back is dialing down our lighting just a little bit more. I think we still have a little bit more work to do to matching our shadow, and we're going to be trying a lot on segment 2. Jasper's going to be doing quite a bit of different things. We're going to be bringing some props in to have him interact with. We're going to be making sure that interaction really does work between our subject, who's Sarah, and Jasper, who's our other subject, making sure that interaction actually works. And with these, as long as we're fairly confident that the lighting and the camera angles match, we don't have to bring every single shot into Photoshop then. We can do that sort of thing after the fact. So it's going to get a lot more fun, and it's going to be a lot more fluid after the break.
Absolutely. So I just want to read you a quick quote from the internet. First of all, Jasper, the internet wants to give you a big round of applause for doing this. So. And you absolutely deserve that. Aaron Roberto Ojeda says, spending time on the boring stuff is what later on will make your shots stand out even more. There's plenty of talent shooting photos out there, but talent plus knowledge, now that is a dangerous mix.
Awesome. Love it.
Very cool. All right, it is already only day 1 of composite photography with Aaron Nace, and we are learning so much. And I think Aaron is the only photographer who can make math really fun during a photography shoot. We've learned just so much. But no matter what your skill level, I think composite photography is something everyone can do, because it's about getting the camera angles right and getting it all right in camera so that your job later in Photoshop is a breeze. And so already this morning, Aaron has gone over about how to create a sketch, come up with an idea, create a sketch, and then from there work on key elements to your shoot and making sure the lighting is the same throughout all your elements, and you'll be on the road to success and creating a great composite image for your client or for your portfolio. So if this is a class that you want to learn more and more, we have so much more that is coming up. The final composite image product from today and the whole shoot from tomorrow, there's going to be so much goodness. But if this is something that you would like in your toolbox, in your photography toolbox to learn from again and again, I highly suggest that you click the Buy Now button and grab this course for $99, because in just a couple of days that will go up to $149 after the live event is over. So we will be back in just 15 minutes with more composite photography. We'll see you then.
I'm thrilled to announce an upcoming week-long event here at Creative Live, June 3rd through 8th, Adobe Creative Apps for Beginners. The Adobe apps are the most powerful software for creative professionals in any field. That's including design, photo, video, web development.
This special 6-day event is going to introduce you to all of the most popular applications: Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, Dreamweaver, and After Effects. On June 3rd, Jack Davis will start us off with an introduction to the power of design with Graphic Design Essentials.
On June 4th, Kara Plichinich will show you how to use InDesign to create a variety of print layouts with pixel-perfect accuracy.
On June 5th, Janine Warner will teach you everything you need to know to create simple websites using Dreamweaver.
On June 6th, you'll learn how to make beautiful infographics and icons with Erica Gammett's Illustrator class.
On June 7th, Lisa Snyder returns to Creative Live to cover all the essentials you need to start editing photos like a pro with Photoshop.
Finally, we'll wrap up the week on June 8th with Jeff Foster's class on After Effects, where you'll learn how to make simple animations and motion graphics.
If you're serious about your creative work, then the Adobe apps can be some of your most powerful tools. But there are a lot of them, and so it can be difficult to know exactly where to get started.
That's right, whether you do photography or graphic design, self-publishing or web design, join us June 3rd through 8th as we give you all the introductory lessons that you need to make Adobe an essential part of your creative process.
Would you like to join our team of experts live here in the studio? If so, fill out the form that you see and our producers will be in touch. But we'll see all of you online for Adobe Creative Apps for Beginners
right here on Creative Live.
Hi there, I'm Russ,
And I'm Kenna.
and we are happy to announce the Lighting Essentials series here on Creative Live.
During this 5-day event, we're bringing you 5 talented and passionate photographers who are going to teach you all about that subject that you know and love,
And maybe kind of fear.
lighting. On June 12th, come join photographer Lindsay Adler, who will introduce you to creating high-impact studio lighting with little fuss. Lindsay will introduce you to the basics of studio lighting and yet give you strategies for how to use those basics in creative ways. Along the way, you'll learn advanced effects, crafty ways for working with limited gear, tips and tricks for ensuring that your light is flattering and dramatic, and much more.
On June 13th, world-renowned photojournalist Rick Friedman will join us for an introduction on how to optimize natural light to create stunning dynamic images. During his 3 decades as a photojournalist, Rick has photographed everyone from presidential candidates to the world's brightest scientists and innovators. You'll master doing more with less equipment, understanding the light in a wide variety of settings, lighting locations quickly and on the fly, and more.
On June 14th, we are pleased to bring back Creative Live veteran Roberto Valenzuela. As you know, off-camera flashes can be a powerful tool for both creating and complementing available light. While they might seem overly complicated and stylistic, speed lights are actually an effective way to control flare and create glow. By simplifying the process and giving you a step-by-step formula, Roberto is going to eliminate your fear and give you the foundation that you need to be a better photographer.
On June 15th, join award-winning photographer Tony Corbell for an in-depth exploration of how light works and how it can be controlled to create dramatic images. Many photographers will test light as they shoot. Tony's methods will allow you to understand and plan the light before you even begin, giving you the opportunity to focus completely on your clients as you shoot and take your work to the next level.
Finally, on June 16th, join photographer Chuck Arland for an introduction to innovative lighting methods that result in breathtaking dynamic images. You'll build a foundation using manipulating strategies and reverse engineering tactics, transforming mundane situations with light, doing more with less equipment, and beyond. Chuck will give you the confidence that you need to fearlessly approach any shoot and walk away with awesome photos.
We couldn't be happier to bring you 5 amazing instructors who plan to cram this week full of knowledge, hands-on experience, and in-depth education.
We look forward to seeing all of you June 12th through 16th for Lighting Essentials here at Creative Live.
Hello, I'm Jack Davis, and I'm going to be teaching Lightroom 5 coming up June 17th through 19th at creativelive.com. Some of the things that we're going to be covering in this Lightroom 5 class is going to be, first off, how to optimize your image, how to get that perfect shot in terms of color, tone, and clarity. Next, we're going to be covering enhancing and special effects, because Lightroom is actually incredibly capable at doing everything from high-key black and whites, luscious sepia tones, even hand tinting without the need of Photoshop or third-party filters. Last, what we're going to be covering in this class deals with video. And now with Lightroom 5, you can not only enhance your video to make it match your beautiful print images, you can also go in there and combine your clips using the brand new slideshow video capabilities. Not only can I give you the steps to optimize and enhance your workflow, but I can tell you the whys behind the hows. Because if you understand what's going on and how Lightroom works, you're going to be able to come up with your own techniques, your own capabilities, your own workflows that will allow you to do stuff that nobody else can do. So whether you're a seasoned professional or a ridiculously enthusiastic hobbyist, this class on Lightroom is for you. With the quality, the flexibility, and the speed that's possible with a streamlined Lightroom 5 workflow, you're going to be able to do more than you ever thought possible before. We hope you can make it to Lightroom 5, coming to CreativeLive.com June 17 through 19. We'll see you there.
Hi, I'm John Jantsch, author of Duct Tape Marketing, and I'll be teaching a free marketing workshop on Creative Live, June 26th through the 28th, and I hope you'll join me. I've installed the duct tape marketing system in thousands of small business. Service providers, product, retail, it doesn't seem to matter. When you focus on the right things, on the right customers, and on the right point of differentiation, this system works. In this workshop, I'm going to teach you how to build a complete marketing action plan in just 3 days. Day one, we're going to tackle the strategy part. It's so essential to get that before we dive into the tactics, so you'll know where you're going and why you're going there. Day two, we are going to spend the whole day on all of the online things that have become so important, but for a lot of business owners are very confusing because they're changing so fast. So we're going to nail that part of it. Now, on day three, we're going to bring it all together. We're going to focus on lead generation, lead conversion, and on your customer experience, and mapping out exactly what you're going to do the next day and the next day and the next week. So if you're looking for practical, actionable strategies and tactics for your business, you are not going to want to miss this workshop. I'll see you in June. I'm looking for 8 business owners to join me live in the studio in San Francisco for this workshop. You're going to get 3 days of solid time with a really small group to work on your business. This is worth literally thousands of dollars. All you have to do is create a short 60-second video. Tell me about your business, when you started it, why you started it, and maybe a couple of your greatest marketing challenges. Then upload that video and tweet us a link and use the hashtag DuctTapeLive.
Welcome back to the final segment of day one here in Compositing 101 with Aaron Nace on Creative Live. We will be finishing up, but first we have to give away the final prize of the day. We get to give away the final prize of the day.
It's an honor.
It really is. And we are giving away a Pro Compositing 5-pack from Phlearn.com. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, the Compositing 5-pack is really great. Basically, it takes you through all the steps in Photoshop for different types of compositing. So we've got element compositing like what we're doing today. We've got frame compositing, cutting people out of their backgrounds, and we've even got, combining multiple different exposures of the same person. We've got creating the same person over and over and over again to create different subjects. So it's a ton to learn, and if you guys are into compositing, into the kind of fun stuff we're doing now, this is a perfect pack.
That sounds fantastic, and that is a $149 value. So this is exciting, and this is going out to @FeltPhoto, who entered on Twitter, and the quote was, "Put yourself in the place of the subject for ideas you wouldn't get behind the camera," which is, I think, a good advice for even non-compositing.
And it totally worked, right?
It totally did. So thank you again to Phlearn and to LoPro for the prizes that we gave away today. We will be continuing to give away more prizes throughout the workshop, so keep entering, and let's just get right back to it.
Right on. Thanks, Russ. All right, so welcome back to the final segment of the day. Now, during the break, we had a couple of changes that we noticed. Sometimes when you're in it, you see a little bit things differently, and one of the things that we're seeing differently is the lighting actually wound up changing. We did change our light midway through the first round, and we brought it actually back in this direction. Now, looking at our lighting and the shadow and everything that was on the original photograph, it was like, okay, never mind, the light actually needs to go in that direction. So those things will happen. The other thing, and it's actually kind of funny, all that time and energy we spent matching our camera angle, well, we wound up choosing a different image as our base image to use. So we're going to have to redo that matching of the camera angles. And you guys are like, oh, that took like 45 minutes the first time. Well, we're actually going to do it really quickly. So since we chose a different image, we're going to now choose basically to use the same exact principles that we did in the last segment, and we're going to be doing them a little bit quicker. So we can see here, this is just kind of a rough, very rough composite that we put. Jasper was standing in there. You can see the shadow direction behind Jasper. That's at about 50% opacity. Let me just bring that up to 100% here. And there we go. There we go. That's at 100%. So you can see now the shadow direction does in fact match the lighting. So pretend like he's similar to the glass of orange juice. The shadow direction is in fact matching it. We can darken the shadow down a little bit in Photoshop. That's not a huge deal. But what we do want to do is make sure we do now match the perspective again, because the perspective we matched earlier was from a different frame where the camera was just a little bit different actually in the frame. So if we bring this back down in opacity, you can see now we're not looking at it, we're too far down on it, so we actually need to come back up. So the milk does matching the milk in this final cereal bowl. So I haven't moved the camera yet at all, and we're actually going to pull it back up. So it could probably come back up like another foot or so. So this is one of those things, and it's really interesting. You guys, are seeing the process as we explain it. But during a photo shoot, guys, this stuff is not going to take that long. Like matching your camera angles and things like that, that's not going to take 30 minutes. It's taking a little bit of time because we're actually like explaining it and things like that here. But we're going to get this done in 2 or 3 minutes, rematching our camera angles. So, all right, if you don't mind, Jasper, just hang out there, and John's going to take a picture of you, and then I'm going to come right back here into Lightroom and Photoshop, and we're going to work on matching the angles again. So I think this is actually a really good, it's a really good lesson. Sometimes things change, in the middle of a photo shoot. Let's just go ahead and edit that here in Photoshop. Sometimes things change in a photo shoot, and sometimes you do something and you're like, oh, you know what, that needs to completely, our angle is completely wrong. We need to make sure that matches again. But that doesn't mean that it has to always take up a lot of time. In this case, we're going to be basically doing the same thing. Instead of taking 20 or 30 minutes, our goal is to take 2 or 3 minutes. All right, so we're now matching the pool, and we can see that the pool of liquid, let's just transform this. There we go, and scale it. We're already doing quite a bit better. Let's just come a little bit higher if you wouldn't mind, John. So we need to, if you want to see what you need to do, if I kind of stretch this in, that's basically the same idea as pulling this up. And that would get us to about the right size that we want to get there. All right, so we're basically using the exact same techniques that we did in the first segment. We're just doing it again on super fast forward right now. So, and then once this is done, then Jasper, we're going to take it over. And you had some really cool ideas with using the inner tube like over the top of your head. It's going to be really, really cool. All right, let's go ahead and make sure this matches as well. So we're going to just right-click here, go to Edit This in Photoshop. And you guys can see how quick this really is. You know, once it shows up in Photoshop, we're just clicking and dragging this right into Photoshop. We're going to lower the opacity and hit Command-T to kind of bring our size down a little bit. There we go. And now we're just going to match this point here. So this really can be quite a quick process. It doesn't have to take a whole long time. All right, we're almost there. Can we come up just a little bit more, John? Would you mind? All right. Can everyone see how we're getting a little bit closer and closer and closer? All right. Sorry we had that. We spent all that time calculating the camera angle, and then we decided to change it. It's mostly just a test. See if you guys are paying attention. Could you do it again and again and again? There we go. All right, and let's just go ahead and do this one as well. So we've already taken 4 different frames and brought them into Photoshop and kind of matched these up. So even, you know, if a client's here or whatever, you can do this stuff on, you know, a relatively short time frame if you do need to, especially if you're not, you know, having to like teach it as you go along. All right, and we can see now that we really are getting quite a bit closer. We rotate that a little bit, and now the milk from, can you guys see how the milk from the actual pool that he's in does pretty well match the milk from our bowl here. So let's just put a quick layer mask on there and mask out the outsides of our bowl, and then we're gonna get ready to start shooting. There we are, perfect. Now, because we don't have a hard surface here at the right side, the shadows are not really showing up, and it's because the surface that we're using, this pool, it has light kind of like coming into it because it's a translucent material. So that's kind of like not creating these hard shadows. So what we're going to have to do if we decide to use an exposure where a shadow will be visible on that wall, we're going to have to wind up making that shadow in Photoshop, which really isn't that big of a deal. Just kind of something to keep in mind. All right, pretty cool. And our exposure is just a little bit too bright as well. So what's our aperture, John, up there?
16.
It's at 16. Let's bump that up to about 18. All right, Jasper, would you mind coming more in the center of the pool? Yeah, perfect. Let's take another exposure, and we're almost there. All right. So for those of you guys watching at home and here, like what we spent about 45 minutes doing on the first segment, here we're doing in what, like 5 minutes maybe? So it doesn't have to take forever. Just learning it is going to take a little bit of time, but actually like doing it for yourself should take quite a bit less time. All right, let's just bring that in. And in this case, what we're going to be doing is making sure our exposure and our light levels look pretty good here. All right, and let's put a layer mask on there and go ahead and paint away black. All right, I think we could even go for a little bit. We're at 18 now, John? Yeah, I think we could go maybe F20 or so. Okay. We're pretty close, but I think we can go just a little bit more, and that's gonna help. And you guys can see this like color cast that's it's because of our pool here. We can take care of that in Photoshop really easily. So the color cast we're not too worried about, just our general exposure. If you want to take another picture, look scared. Perfect. All right, let's just open up Lightroom here, and there we go. And we'll just edit it in Photoshop. So did we just do that 5 times in just 5 minutes or so? It really doesn't take that long. That's really awesome. All right, and then once we get all this, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking suggestions from everyone here, and we're going to actually put Jasper in the cereal bowl, and we're going to be taking suggestions from our live audience as well as the audience on the internet to figure out what we're going to be doing as far as posing and everything like that goes. Perfect. Now there is one thing that I want to do here because can everyone see how I'm having, like, that was pretty easy to mask that out, right? And it's just going to blend pretty easily without milk because it pretty much is milk. Like if we have that, like that that looks pretty much real. I don't really have to do that much blending there. But it's going to be a little bit harder to cut out Jasper's head. And the reason is because he's on like a dark surface and everything like that. So what we can do is we can bring in a white surface, like a white card or something like that, and put it behind him. And that's going to make it much easier to actually cut him out in Photoshop. So John, yeah, if you want to kind of come around. Oh, it's going to block the monitor. Maybe we can move the monitor. But
Get a smaller card.
let's see if we can bring this. Oh yeah, it's going to block me if I'm at the computer, isn't it too? Okay. Well.
Get a smaller one.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we can basically, to help yourself out that, and that's another lesson, for Photoshop too, is it's going to be a little bit harder to cut his head out because, he's like, there's dark areas back here. But if we hold a white card right here, then it becomes really, really easy to actually cut him out. So not too hard. So in just a couple of minutes, we completely changed our perspective again. We're doing our camera angles, and now we're pretty close to start shooting as soon as we get that white card in there.
Fantastic. In the meantime, Sloth is wondering, so is this a lone wolf job, or do you usually have an assistant? Like, we've got John wonderfully helping us out today because we're shooting the workshop. But do you usually work alone, or do you usually have an assistant?
Good question. I don't work alone. I did for a few years, when I was first starting. Thankfully, I don't have to work alone anymore. And it really does help save. There are some things that when you do work alone, I think it's a good way to kind of that's a good way to learn, because you kind of learn each of the different pieces of the puzzle. Having assistance and help and things like that, it helps out for a couple of reasons. One is sometimes you need a separate pair of hands. Sometimes it helps things just go along quicker. And if you are working for a client, and they need something done on a certain time frame, if you do the job, in 3 hours less because you have a couple more people there, it's going to wind up costing the client less money, which you can save them money in the long run. So usually on my photo shoots, there are anywhere from 5 to 10 people present to help out with basically everything. And that's including producers, hair, makeup, models, styling, location scouts, to photo assistants, and usually someone doing administration, behind the scenes sort of stuff, talking with clients and whatnot. So yeah, in the early days it was just me and it was all fun, and now there's a huge team and it's fun in a different way. That's a good question. Okay, cool. And that might need to move as he moves as well.
We have 2 of them.
Okay, perfect.
I can keep moving them.
Okay, perfect. All right, I think we're ready to start shooting. For the majority of the compositing, it looks good. I'm just going to step behind the camera and make sure that that's in the right.
Yeah, check your focus again because we're using the camera.
Oh, good point, John. Thank you. That's in a good place there. All right, perfect. Yeah, and that is in a pretty good place. And we can see, if we flip over to Lightroom, we can probably see the images coming up onto the screen there. And we can see the fill card and how that's going to make our job cutting him out just a bit easier. And it would be even easier if that was actually on the inside of the pool, rather than out back. It doesn't even have to rest in the liquid, but something like that. And let's take a shot. Let's take a picture now. There we go. And now we can see how it'll be even easier to cut our subject out from the background. There we go. So in this case, we'll just switch over to talk about Photoshop for just a second. If you were cutting him out and you could just use like a magic wand tool or something like that, select out the white, and then he would be left over. So that makes it really easy. All right, cool. So we matched our lighting. We changed our camera perspective. We did almost everything we did in section 1, again here in section 2 really quickly. And now we're ready. Jasper, you ready to get into it, man? Let's do it. All right. Well, I really like the idea you had with this over your top of your head. I can hand it to you. And if it does work out to make this a Fruit Loopy, I think that would be really awesome. So everything that you were doing with that over the top of their head was really cool. And the goal here, I'll tell Jasper, but I'm telling all of you guys is obviously too. It's supposed to be like a super fun, silly image. Like, this is not supposed to be a serious image. I mean, you could probably tell that. But Jasper, when he's posing, like cute poses, like when you were on your stomach and you were doing like that, like it was just really funny and it was really great. So all that stuff, like there's totally room for all that sort of stuff, and let's just have fun with it. So if you want to start posing, we're getting a little bit of
black from your phone coil.
Oh well, that's kind of funny.
It'll be the shadow.
Yeah, it'll be the shadow. Yeah, that's right.
Swirl it around.
Yeah.
And I can play Sarah here, so if you need someone to play against.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And Sarah's not directly above you. She's above you and that way. So almost like directly above John. And you're probably not necessarily scared of her. We're thinking like maybe you're just like on vacation. Like you just happen to be in this pool and then like she's seeing you in there. So you can kind of like look up in that direction, but that's totally up to you. So yeah. Okay, cool. Well, if you want to just kind of take it over, I like the idea of you kind of like resting in there, sitting in there, playing on your belly was really fun too. And then we're going to start taking suggestions from the audience, and then we're going to take suggestions from people at home, because this is what it's all about. This is when it's really, really fun. All right, Jasper, you ready for it? Let's go for it. Right on. Perfect. Yeah, if you want to lean back. There we go. Oh, beautiful. Or maybe sit up again a little bit more like you had it. Perfect. Can you push that like down on your, yeah, yep. There we go. Perfect. The card's floating? Okay, it's okay. Perfect. Let's rotate a little bit towards me, maybe your legs, okay, and let's push you back in this way a little bit. There we go, beautiful. John, if you could move the card back in this way just a bit, just a little bit more if you don't mind. There we go. Cool, let's sit up, or not sit up, but a little bit more than, yeah, there we go. Perfect. That's awesome. I loved it when you were, over the break, Jasper put a little bit of milk in his mouth and he was kind of spitting it. I thought that was hilarious. Can we do it? There we go. Let's go for it. Ready? Nice. That wins a medal. That's amazing. All right, let's do it again. And this time, actually, let's do it without the white card, I think. Oh my gosh, no, let's keep the white card in. That was really funny. And if we could do it seated up a little bit more, if that's okay. So scoot that down on your body a little more. There we go. All right. Perfect. Those are really, really fun. All right. I love the idea you had when you were kind of on your belly. I thought that was really fun. And you could be maybe facing towards the camera in this case. Yeah. That's awesome. Just adorable. Let's have you bring around so your head is towards that side, if you don't mind. You guys got to see this from this angle. It's the best thing ever. Even if you could turn more around even. Oh, sorry, the other way, Jasper, if you don't mind. There we go, something like that. Perfect. Perfect. There we go. That's awesome. That's awesome. Kind of come a little bit more towards the camera. Yeah. These are absurd, and it's exactly what we want. That's really cool. Maybe pretend like you're looking up towards, yeah, and she'll be a little bit farther back that way. There we go. Perfect. We'll wait for a second for them to load on the computer there. Awesome. Let's try somewhere when you're maybe kind of like sitting up. Oh, we do have a snorkel for you, by the way. Lacey just reminded me. Yeah. Let's try some when you're like sitting up in the tube. So maybe you can actually like sit with your bottom on the bottom of the pool. Flip the floaty like right around you, and then just like sit there with the snorkel on, like you were kind of like diving, and now you're now you're coming up. I wish we had some water wings too. That would be really awesome. Yeah, maybe instead of on your face, yep, there we go, perfect. Yeah, perfect. John, if you wouldn't mind coming back around, oh, sorry, this way a little bit more. There we go. Beautiful. And Jasper, if you could kind of come towards me, maybe about a foot, that would be really great. There we go. And then rotate your chest towards me just a little bit more. Perfect. Perfect. And then look towards me and give me that like nice smile. John, if we could bring the card out a little bit more. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. That's an awesome smile. It's like, I'm in a giant bowl of Fruit Loops and I'm fun. Let's have you kind of like splash in the water a little bit. There we go. Yeah. You could actually like splash with your hands a little bit. Yeah. It's so funny that inner tube is pink too, because it's just the perfect amount of humor.
I'm glad I can't see it with the whiteboard.
That's perfect. Awesome. So what I'm going to do now, guys, is these poses are really great. What we're going to do is I'm going to take just one or two of these and we're going to bring it back into Photoshop. This is just like making sure just final that it's going to work. And then we're going to pass it on to you guys, and then everyone's going to hopefully have a go at helping out Jasper to create some really fun, crazy, zany poses. And in the meantime, I'm totally open to any questions anyone may have.
Fantastic. There's a lot of love and a lot of laughter for these shots that are happening right
now. They're really, really good.
They're hilarious is what they are. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Jasper, you're doing amazing. It's so good. They're still coming in from the camera here, but yeah, they're so good. All right, let's see if I'm going to go ahead and open one of these in Photoshop here. And there we go, edit in Photoshop. We'll go ahead and bring this in.
While you're opening that image up, Andre from Ontario, Canada is wondering if you always laugh this much on your shoots, because everyone's loving your laughter and your sense of humor.
How can you not laugh? It's awesome. I love, this is like my favorite thing in the world, and I'm just really thankful that I can be able to do this for a living. I try to have a lot of fun, during the photo shoots, because it's just, well, when you're doing stuff like this, it's hard not to have fun. But yeah, I always try to, it's, when you're there, oftentimes, in my own photography, I'm usually getting people to do really weird, uncomfortable things. That's a pretty typical part of my photographic process. So I take it upon myself to help people feel comfortable and make sure that they know that they're doing well and make sure that they know we're having a really good time. So yeah, First, I love it, and how could you not laugh? But second, I feel like it's a really important thing as far as like the photographic process. So I always try to do that. Oh, this brings up another really great point here, and we might actually, John. Yeah. Okay, perfect. I can't see you, but I can hear you. What we might wind up doing is rotating that white card, because I'm gonna make a cool kind of like teaching point here. So this white card here, if we rotated it around sideways and brought it back like at a little bit of an angle, what we could do is, can everyone see that shadow? Let's just zoom in here. Can everyone see the shadow of the feet there on the white card? What we can do in Photoshop, if we were to rotate the white card and make sure we get all the shadow and pull it back at a little bit of an angle, what we could do is actually take the shadow out of this image and apply it directly onto the cereal bowl, and it would make it look like exactly like those feet shadows are on the cereal bowl, which would be a very, very cool effect. So this is kind of why we're doing this here in camera, to check a couple things like, okay, is this working as far as our colors, as far as our exposures, as far as posing and angle and things like that, but also like our happy accident with, oh, this white card is actually catching these shadows, which is perfect, because then we're going to use them on the background. And we can see if I do a very, very rough job cutting this out, just like that, you could kind of imagine these shadows actually like being on the back of the cereal bowl. I'd make them a little bit darker, and that would just like totally finalize the effect and make it really look like he really is in there. All right, what do you guys think so far of this? It's pretty awesome, right?
Aaron, I was
really awesome.
Just chatting with my producer, and it's really hard for me to focus on what you were talking about right then with that shot of Jasper. This is so hilarious, and I'm so excited to be able to be a part of this. So thank you for being here.
Thank Jasper, man. Look at this. It's pure gold. Yeah, Yeah, okay. And now her face totally makes sense. She's like, what is going on here? And we're gonna, the cool thing is here in Photoshop, because we did take some pictures with some of the Fruit Loopies in here as well, we can then combine them in later as well. So it's not necessarily, I know there aren't any in this photo, but we have photos with the Fruit Loopies in there as well. So we can always bring some of those back in around Jasper to kind of like make room for him. But let's go ahead and make a decision as a team right now. If he were to be if we were to use this floaty as a Fruit Loopy, he would have to be like that big, right? Or the Fruit Loopies would have to be that big. Either which will not work. So I think we're gonna have to just say this is a floaty, and then there will be Fruit Loopies around. Is that, we can all make a decision on that? Cool. All right. Now, yeah, let's go ahead and open it up. Who has the first suggestion on what we want Jasper to do? Yeah, let's go ahead.
I was thinking it might be funny if he was in there like taking a bath. So, you know, if he's with the milk, he would put it under his arms or, you know, scrub himself down with it.
Totally. Okay. And then we could probably ditch the floaty too, right? If he's taking a bath. Thank you. All right. If only we had like a shower cap or like a rubber ducky or something like that. That would be really funny. All right. So if taking a bath, yeah, like scrubbing here, like washing. What else would he be doing if taking a bath? Oh yeah, like splashing yourself with water or something like that. Kind of like splashing. Yeah, you don't have to go all the way. It's like pretty sticky. It actually is like milk. You're doing awesome, Jasper. All right. So take it away. Whenever you're ready, and I'll be here. Take it. There we go. Yeah, washing the feet was awesome. Let's do more of that. Yeah. Do we have a sponge? Do we have like a big sponge? I wonder. We're looking for a big sponge? Wonderful. That would be great. And, oh gosh, Jasper. Let's do like maybe one armpit. Oh, and if we could, let's see. John is not currently in the room. Maybe Julia, if you wouldn't mind holding the white card, and if we can hold it horizontal, and there we go. That will be able to use for like reflections and things like that. Perfect. Yep. And you can go ahead and set it directly down into the milk. Yep. There we go. You can look at me as well. I'm sorry. A sponge, okay. Sorry. All right. This really is really funny. Oh my gosh. Where did you find Jasper? He's got the best facial expressions ever. All right. Well, here's a really good teaching point is there's opportunity for him to be like looking at our subject, right? Like looking straight up at the subject. But every time he looks at me, I'm laughing so hard I can't contain it. And I think that's just pure photographic gold. And I don't think we should miss that part of the process. So it might make a little more staged, but it's just so funny that I think we gotta leave it in. Jasper, if you could rotate around towards me a little bit. There we go, just like that. Yep, maybe just a little bit less. There we go. Yeah, both of those would be great. Perfect. Yeah, and let's just keep going. And those. Maybe like under the pits. That is so funny. Perfect. Let's do some more under the pits. Maybe just smiling at the camera would be, yeah. Yeah, perfect.
So, Aaron, Phil Birdie points out that the whiteboard is not getting the whole shadow behind him. Is that something you're concerned about?
Oh, good point. Well, yeah, when his hand is up, it's not getting the whole shadow behind him. That's a really good point. that would be a great opportunity because the cereal bowl doesn't extend vertically forever also. So what that is, it would be a balance between when does the cereal bowl stop and when does the shadow stop. And if the shadow that we're capturing stops before the cereal bowl stops, we can either move the frame up just a little bit and make sure we bring the whiteboard up as well to capture that. Or what we can also do is just try to basically mask in just a little bit of a shadow in Photoshop. So yeah, it's a really good question. And as I'm seeing these, John, I think it would be good if we could actually submerge the boards just a little bit in the water so we don't get that kind of like dark line in between the milk and the white boards. Yeah, we're trying to balance a lot of things like this. And this is what's so fun about a composite, because this image alone, although it is hilarious and awesome, it's just part of the composite. So that's, like this image, I don't know, maybe someone would put it in their portfolio because it is awesome, but it's cool to be able to take these like pieces and then put them together into the final image. Cool, I think we got it. What are some other suggestions? I love the taking a bath. Yeah.
Suggestions from the internet are coming in. Eric Photo says it would be great if Jasper was wearing the snorkel mask and just poking your eyes and head out of the milk, and maybe even spraying some of the milk out of the snorkel.
There we go. You think you could do it? Yeah. Right on. All right, where's our snorkel mask? Oh, here we go. Don't spray too hard because you're gonna get these guys soaked.
Hey, they knew what they were getting into
right?
when they came here.
That's what you get for being a studio audience. Soaked by the milk snorkel. Oh, did it?
We're good.
Wardrobe malfunction over here?
That's already happened.
That's already happened. That's awesome. Let me know if you need any help. My fingers are more dry.
We also had some posing suggestions to have him like be surprised and trying to cover himself.
Oh, that's a really good idea too.
The girl caught him.
There we go.
Back to it, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want me under the water this way though?
I don't know. Let's try.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Annie Leibovitz Whoopi Goldberg. Love that shot. Yeah, if you want to pull a Whoopi, let's let's do that. And then I like the surprised idea after. Yeah, and the camera was, for those of you guys who are paying attention to the perspective, the camera was much higher in that case, so totally different shot. But yeah, she was laid out like that. Yeah, maybe bring your arms a little bit above the water. There we go. Perfect. And actually, let's have you like rotate around so you're not. Oh, actually, I was thinking this in my head, but it's actually a decent teaching point. Okay. It's going to sound a little bit weird, but we don't want Jasper's crotch facing the camera. Maybe you would think about this on a photo shoot, maybe not. No big deal. But in my head, I'm like, okay, crotch can't face the camera. We got to rotate him around. It's supposed to be like a funny, shot with a kid. Obviously, that's not an angle that we want to be photographing. So, just a couple of cool, fun things to keep in mind. If you could rotate around just a little bit more, there we go, perfect. And then, yeah, there we go. And then this would be actually a really great angle for you to kind of like look up at Sarah. Perfect. Pulling a Whoopi. Let's try the surprise. I like that suggestion from the internet. So maybe if you want to sit up in the milk, and then we can act like you're kind of surprised. So what would you be doing out of surprise? What do you think, Jasper? Maybe trying to cover yourself up, or we could do that?
Yeah, that was the suggestion from the internet, was as though he were, washing himself and shocked and surprised, like, oh my.
Oh my. Whoa. You do look very scared there. You look very frightened. It's turning into a B horror film. Perfect. Let's see. We could do, I really like that pink thing too. Do we have another idea for shocked and surprised?
There was one suggestion of a basically like food fight with Sarah, like kind of poking back up at her.
Oh, that's a really cool idea.
With the floaty?
With the floaty.
Yeah.
You know what? Because the Fruit Loopies are rather small, if we do, if we get something that is the black, let's try maybe the the gray. I don't want to ruin that gaffer tape. But if we do have something that that Jasper can hold and kind of like hold up, maybe he could be offering a Fruit Loop. What do you think? Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Yeah.
I don't want to throw one at her.
No, well, I don't know. You can throw it if you want, but holding it might be better because throwing is hard in photos. Like you guys have probably made, like with photography, a couple things are hard. Like rain is hard to capture because it's a motion type of thing. Throwing is hard to capture because it's a motion type of thing. So unless you can like catch if someone's throwing a football, if the football is not like right here, it just looks like they're doing this, right? So it's like some things like throwing are hard to capture. So it might be better if you just held it up, if you want to try that. Like here you go. Or maybe with two hands, like you're lifting it like it's really heavy. Yeah, there we go. Can you turn around and face the camera a little bit more? There we go, perfect. Maybe if you were kind of like holding it up like that. Yeah. Here's your giant Fruit Loop. Oh, could you scooch towards the camera a little bit? We're losing a little bit of the giant Fruit Loop. There we go. Maybe bring your hands down just a little bit so we're not losing it at the top of the frame. That would be ridiculous. A little bit lower. There we go. Perfect. And look up towards Sarah. Perfect. Oh, I like that idea. Really cool. All right, let's switch to the snorkel working again. All right, perfect. Let's switch to that. That'll be awesome. And then what do you guys think? Should it be on his stomach or on his back for the snorkel shot? On his stomach? Yeah. Are you okay with that, Jasper? Right on.
You said stomach, right?
Yeah, stomach. Yeah. It's like
I'm very shy.
it's like I've been in a pool of milk for an hour in front of a live studio audience. I'm okay with pretty much everything at this point.
And then just to set up another one, there are suggestions that he be basically afraid of and trying to escape the spoon.
Trying to escape the spoon?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah.
My head's too big.
And there was also another one earlier saying that he should be trying to escape and climb out of the ladder on the side of the bowl.
That's a really good point. Okay, cool. So there is, if you guys remember, in the original photograph, we had a little ladder made, and he was kind of like trying to escape out of the side of the ladder. So if we did want him to escape out of the side of the ladder, what we could do is, because we can't really use the edge of the pool, we would have to kind of like use the whiteboard. So we can pull the whiteboard around to that side and have him kind of like look like he's escaping from that side, which I think would be really cool too. Yeah, I like all these ideas.
Like looking back over.
Yeah. Perfect. Let me see. I like it when you're facing the camera. I think that's probably like the best. It's the most humorous. Because if you're facing too far back away, we lose your great facial expressions and we lose a couple other things. So definitely like facing towards the camera, I think is the best what we want. I can't believe you're in a giant pool of milk right now.
In.
Yeah. If you want to like fall in. Perfect. Yeah. Let's go for it. Perfect. I'm sorry. This is just a really funny shoot. I'm loving it. Okay. Are the goggles, the snorkel goggles, maybe a slight malfunction? Oh, okay. They're just about ready.
Could we do that again, but have him turn his feet maybe that way?
Yeah.
So more light on his face.
More light on his face. Todd, great point. Yep. So let's do the same thing, Jasper, if you wouldn't mind, and then we'll even more around. So like maybe your feet are facing towards the studio audience.
This is my studio.
Yeah.
And am I camera or Sarah?
You'll do maybe towards camera first, and then towards Sarah after, if you don't mind. That's awesome. And could you kind of like splash around as you're doing it, so it almost looks like you just like landed? It's kind of hard, I know. It's like, could you do these 20 things at the same time? Oh, you're gonna fall and I'm gonna capture it? Yeah, let's do it. Right on. That's it. Let's do it again. Let's just do it for real. What's that?
It's like a public pool.
Perfect. Those are awesome. Let's try it one more time if you don't mind. Yep, and whenever you're ready. Very cool. Awesome. Cool, I think we can go ahead and sit back up. What do you guys think? Pretty awesome so far.
I think that's fantastic.
Oh, those splashes are really, really cool. I definitely dig those. I like the idea of doing the splashes, but I do like to see your face too. Maybe we could do you need a towel or anything to clean off your face? You're okay? All right. Maybe we could do kind of like what you were doing earlier, where you had, let's get the pink floaty around you again. And here, I can help you with that. And then you could be kind of like sitting in the middle of the pool, kind of like splashing, like, you know how like a toddler would just like splash and have fun? There we go. Your floaties, sir. What's that? There is, really? Oh, wow. Sorry. Perfect. Yeah, I love the floaty because it adds like a little bit more of an element of humor to it. You know what I mean? Like I think it's funnier with the floaty, which is what's the whole goal of the thing. So yeah, if you want to kind of like. Perfect. Perfect. Let's see these as they come up on screen. Awesome job. These are so fun. Let's have you do the same thing, but let's face kind of this way. There we go. Perfect. If you could kind of like giggle. There we go. Maybe put your hands up like, wee! There we go. Julia, are you getting soaked back there? A little bit. Those are awesome. Yeah, I think that's priceless. With the floaty and with a little splashing with, you know, the facial expression, I think that really helps to make it.
So,
perfect.
Aaron, quick question. So we had that list of elements that we identified earlier in the day. Do you want to take a look at that and make sure that we are still on track with that?
Let's do it. It is on the whiteboard, which is over here.
I believe Lacey's getting that set up there.
Oh, we can wheel that around there. Yeah, that's a really good point, and it is important that we do keep track because I'll lift it up over. Yeah, you want both lift it? Okay. That is a really good point because it's easy to get distracted in, you know, having fun with someone splashing around in a giant pool of milk and then forget to do something that you should have done. So that's why we keep this. All right. So here's our list. The elements of composite, for this composite in particular, that we had to make sure we actually did. And I can go ahead and start checking some of these off. So the camera angle for the bowl of cereal, we measured that, right? We did that one. We can go ahead and check that off. The camera angle for the giant pool, we did that twice. So we can definitely check that off as well. The focal length to shoot the giant pool. What we did is we kept the same focal length from shooting the bowl of cereal to the giant pool. We changed our distance a little bit, but we kept the same focal length. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep the same perspective as well. So we did that one. Check that off. The matching the lighting from the both of the shots. We worked on that during the first part of section 3. And on the second part of section 3, we brought the lighting back around in this direction, which did help. And we saw in the beginning part of section 4, which is this section, how when he sat up, the shadow direction did match the shadow direction of the orange juice class. Do you guys remember that? Okay, cool. So we did that as well. Matching lighting from the shots. The rough compositing on set, which we've been doing several times. Check that. The subjects interacting. We did stuff with Sarah, and then you've been looking up in that direction. And we kind of threw the idea out that it was just kind of funnier when Jasper was looking at the camera. So I think we've taken care of that. Different takes of the cereal bowl, full and empty. We did that in section 2. The match the wood grain for the flip-flops and measure the center of the frame. The flip-flops we're going to be doing in just a little bit, and there we go.
I think we're good to do them now-ish.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Jasper, we got some really funny, awesome shots. So I think we're going to go ahead and we can switch gears. How much time do we have?
We have got about a half hour.
30 minutes? Okay, perfect. Well, that's going to be more than enough time to do the wood grain from the flip-flops and then measuring from the center of the frame. That's basically matching whenever you're doing this, and you can't really see it in the camera, but basically if the cereal bowl is going to be on the bottom side of the frame, you want to do something relatively similar in the final image. So that's why he's like the cereal bowl is kind of like making up the bottom portion of that frame. It's not usually a huge deal, especially if you're cutting out someone like this. But if they are like camera right or camera left pretty far, generally, let's say we were compositing him and he was going to be all the way camera right. We wouldn't want to center the camera on him when we were actually taking the picture because you do get some distortion all the way camera right or camera left. So it's better to put your subject where they're actually going to be in the final, so the distortion on them when you photograph match the distortion from the original image. In this case, he's relatively towards the center and on the bottom, so we're just kind of, it totally works here. But that's one thing to keep in mind is where the center of the frame that you're actually photographed, like your original frame, and where the center of the frame that you're going to put the composite in as well. So, cool, good point. All right, guys, give it up for Jasper. Awesome job. Do you need help out?
No, I want to make sure I was.
Yeah, you are good to go. You are good to go.
Jasper, thank you so much on behalf of everyone here at Creative Live and the internet audience. You were amazing.
Yeah, that was
thank you.
Really, really good. Awesome job, Jasper.
This is how I'm getting
I believe there's a shower here too, which is, you're probably really happy to hear that.
I'll just ride that 358 if anybody's local. I'm all fit in.
Perfect. Jasper, again, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're going to switch to the next section, which is the very last section, guys. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be photographing a couple of elements that we're going to be putting into the final shot as well. So let me just switch over to Photoshop. There we go. And what we're going to be doing, we have some flip-flops, regular size flip-flops, and a towel, a regular size towel. And we're going to be photographing those outside. They're not going to be in the pool or anything like that. We're going to be photographing those on a wood texture. And I think we can actually use this table and then photographing them at a similar camera angle, and then we're going to be compositing those and making them miniature as well. So we've got really 3 different elements. We photographed our background, we photographed Jasper in the pool, and then we're going to be doing the flip-flops and the towel. So we're going to do that relatively pretty quick, actually. This pool is not going to move, so what we're going to be doing instead is moving. I think we can use this table. Is everyone okay with us using this table? Yeah, perfect. So we'll just kind of take some of these elements off, if we don't mind, and we'll move this to where we can photograph it. And then that's going to be basically it. So photographing all 3 of these elements and photographing them all in one day, which is pretty amazing that we were able to do all this in one day. The other option here would be to use the floor, because the floor actually does look quite a bit like the table. The only downside with using the floor is there's a giant pool in the way, so we don't really have the room to use the floor. What was that?
The monitor's taped down.
Oh, the monitor's taped down? We could actually just move the monitor off to the side if we needed to do that, and we can put the flip-flops. So do we have the flip-flops on set? Let's go ahead and get these. Perfect. No problem.
Whichever one you want.
All right. Cool. All right, so where do you guys think the flip-flops and the towel should go in the final image? Near the ladder, maybe on the right side of the ladder there, kind of like in shadow. So when you have something that's in shadow, a couple important things to keep in mind. Anything that's in shadow is going to have less contrast than something that's in light. So it's not only going to be a little bit darker, but it's going to have a little bit less contrast. And you can see that there really is not a whole lot of contrast in the shadow there. So as we're lighting like the flip-flops and things like that, we do want the direction of the light to be relatively similar, but I'm not too concerned about having it be directional because technically it's in shadow. So we can try a couple different things. The first thing that I would do is just put a very large light source really close to our props here, and that would basically ensure that we don't have like a whole lot of directionality. It would basically just be almost flat. The other thing which we could totally do is just photograph these in natural light, which is like kind of the easiest thing, right? So let's just try that, and if it, what was that? Yeah, let's try that. Maybe we can just bring the camera over, and we'll photograph them in natural light. If it looks horrible, then we'll put it into light, but you know, you don't need all kinds of cool fancy lighting and things like that to do compositing. We'll just try natural light and see if it works out. Because they, like, just looking at them, they already look like, you know, they're not incredibly well highlighted on one side. They pretty much look exactly like how we'd want. And yeah, and then we're going to be done with basically a rough composite. And we're going to pick back up on day 3 to put everything into Photoshop. Oh, I might need the ladder again. We're going to pick back up on day 3 to bring everything together in Photoshop and not only composite everything together with the shot, but also add like a lot of stylizing to the shot and make it really pop out as well. All right. Now, there are a couple things that we are going to need to change here. John's already making our camera angle a little bit higher, which makes sense because we have quite a bit of a higher, the table is quite a bit higher here. The other thing is obviously our shutter speed. I can't shoot at 1/160th at f20 at ISO 100 and expect to see these at all because we're not letting in nearly enough light. So we do need to change a couple of those things. There we go. Let's just bring this down. And the same with everything else. I am going to be doing like a very rough composite. Now, if you did want to, we had a question earlier about what if you don't have a circle in this or whatever like that. Like this. These are just flip-flops. How am I going to make sure we're matching the camera angle from these flip-flops to the camera angle that's actually happening there? In this case, I'm just going to pretty much fly by the seat of my pants and just make it look like, you know, pretty much like that. But if you did want to, a really good way to do it is to actually just put a round object. Could I grab like a piece of some gaffer tape or something? Perfect. A good way to do it is just to use a round object, like a piece of gaffer tape, and thank you, John. Just place it next to your subject, and that way, or where your subject is going to be, and that way you can basically use the exact same technique and just match it up for the gaffer tape. Once you get your angle correct, take the piece of gaffer tape out, replace it with your subject, and then you know you're at the right camera angle. So same technique, we could just use it for, you know, kind of like replacing in a different way. So I am going to change my camera settings here. We're still going to shoot at like f11 because I do want quite a bit in focus. Oh, turning off our pocket wizard, thank you. All right, but this time I'm going to be shooting at, there we are. This time I'm going to be shooting at ½ a second exposure. Yeah, turn my stabilizer off as well. Thank you, John. So I'm shooting at ½ a second exposure, which in this case doesn't really matter that much because the camera's on a tripod and obviously my subject is not moving. So that's about what we've got. Now, can you guys tell just by looking at that piece of tape, am I too high up on this or too far down? Too high up, right? If you were just looking at the flip-flop, that might have been a little bit harder to tell. But putting that piece of tape in there, if we could bring, actually if Mike could bring, oh, Mike's right there. What's up, Mike? Is someone else in the booth? No. Oh, okay, cool. Nope, it's right here.
Does this keyboard still work? Does this still work? Yeah.
Oh, okay, John can do it maybe. So if we could bring this up and see how this relates to either the pool shot. If you hit, I think G, will bring up the grid view. Or you could bring it into Photoshop if you want to do that too. Oh, okay. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time. I was just going to do like a little bit more of a quick kind of comparison thing. But if we actually wanted to get it in there.
Either way, now we have the monitor.
Yeah, now we have the monitor. Okay, perfect. That's actually faster. So if we want to basically use the same technique, we can think of this instead of being, there we go. Instead of being, you know, the cereal bowl or whatever, we just want to make sure that, you know, that piece of tape would technically be in the same perspective as this cereal bowl, right? All right, and we can see that it is, from the width divided by the height, it is almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So our camera needs to go back quite a bit, which is essentially back and down a little bit, which is going to help give us that like little bit of a lower angle. So with something like flip-flops, you wouldn't see it as much because, like if you see a flip-flop like this compared to like that, it's not that big of a change because it doesn't have a very defined structure. Something, that is, like a square or rectangle, you would see that quite a bit more because it does have a defined structure. That's why it's so easy to composite in like skies and clouds and things like that, because clouds don't have any structure. They can be any shape in the world. It doesn't really matter what they are. So that's, the tighter a shape has, a more identifiable a shape has, the more you have to get this sort of thing right. If it's just like a blob of something, like a piece of popcorn that could look good in any shape, in that case, it tends to matter a little bit less.
Okay, I took another one.
Oh, we took another one? Perfect. All right. And what I'm going to do is, instead of going through, I'm just going to hit the two of those and hit C for the compare button, so we can just kind of look at it. It'll just save a little bit of time instead of going all the way through Photoshop in doing it over and over again. I think we could still come down just a little bit more. And if you did want to measure this, totally, that's up to you. I just want to make sure we're saving some time because it is live, and I'm sure you guys don't want to watch me do it for another 20 minutes, getting our camera angle right for some flip-flops. The other thing that I do want to do is, because we're photographing the flip-flops on the same surface that we photographed the cereal bowl, I do want to make sure that our direction of the table does match, because the grain, we're going to hope to match that up as well. So I am going to be rotating this table around, and I super hope that there's nothing attached to it that's going to fall off as I do this. We're going to be rotating this around. There we go. Just to be sure. The goal is to hope that basically it's the same angle there. What was that?
You moved everything.
Yeah, sorry. And if you want to come more like around towards the front, John, I think that might complete the effect there. Hopefully nothing popped out of there. Oh, this is the tether, isn't it? Okay. This was the tether. All right. Sorry about this, guys. Technical difficulty. Here we go. And let's put the tether back in. All right. We might have to restart the tether. All right.
And one suggestion from the internet is that the towel looks a little bit too neat, like as if it was set there nicely instead of just dropped on the floor.
There we go. See, take advice from people you trust.
That's right.
I trust random people on the internet with everything. Yeah, you're right. It did look way too neat. That looks way better. I totally agree. All right, are we looking at it more? Yeah, more from that angle, something we want? Perfect. Yep, let's do one with a towel. And cool. How much time do we have left?
We have got
about 20 minutes? Perfect. Well, this is pretty much it, guys. We're going to go ahead and do a rough composite of this back into our shot and see it for the day, and then we'll be open up for questions and answer time. All right, so we're just going to edit this in Photoshop real quick, just to make sure that this works. And all right, as long as our camera angles and everything like that are consistent, then we're good to go. All right, and we're just going to make this very small, kind of like here in that side of the frame. Rotate a little bit. There we go. And then we're going to put a layer mask on there. All right. Perfect. And again, if you guys, if you did have like a client on set and things like that, we can see we're overexposed just a little bit here because we're exposing for the median, but technically it's supposed to be underexposed just a little bit because we're supposed to be in shadow here. So we're gonna lower our exposure just a little bit to make sure it does match. But before we do that, let's just make sure that our camera angle is what we want. Let's just make a curves adjustment layer. And I'm going to clip that, and let's just make that just a little bit darker to see that we're good. All right, and we can do a very rough job cutting this out. So if you guys were shooting for a client and things like, I would probably go ahead and call it a wrap before doing this. So like when you're working with a client, I would probably just say, okay, we got the shot, and then, you could just spend a couple hours after the client leaves and photograph these on, so I guess the idea is don't make your client sit around and wait for this sort of thing. You can take care of this after they leave. These are not the important details. This is just all the little, all the little stuff. Things like the towel is, in this case, you can see is, there we go. You can see is kind of over top of the edge of the table. What we would want to do is bring the towel down like this so it wouldn't be, so you can see the other side of the table as well. And that'll help out with the job masking. And then we do want to match wood grain. It's not going to match completely, and it's going to be a little bit smaller, but as long as we get it pretty close, you can see that it will wind up matching decently well. All right, so I'm going to continue to do a very horrible job masking this out, and then we're going to photograph it one more time, and then I think we're going to be done, because this same rule applies when you have a live studio audience. Don't spend 20 minutes photographing a towel. If you wouldn't make your client sit through it, don't make a live studio audience sit through it, I think is the general rule. All right, so as long as our perspective looks pretty decent, and the towel I think is decent, we're getting a little bit too much, highlight and shadow on there. Can you guys see it? There's too much contrast. It looks kind of pasted in there. So what we can do is the light that's coming from hitting these towels, does everyone know where it's coming from? These windows, right, that are right here. So all we have to do is we just get a black card and we do this. And can we zoom in on these towels just to see there's the before? It is now has a highlight, and now it is completely in shadow. So this is how we would want to photograph it, completely in shadow. And that way it actually is in shadow, so we want to make it look like it's in shadow. We're not doing any Photoshop manipulation. We just actually put it in shadow for the photograph. And John, if you want to photograph. I'm blocking the sandals. Oh, sorry about that. As long as the keyboard, and things like this, as long as the keyboard is not touching these other objects, because we're going to be masking them out anyway. Oh, it is touching the back of there. Okay, cool. We'll move that out, and we'll move this out. Let me just go ahead and do this again.
And push the keyboard just another inch.
Just one more inch. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. All right. Perfect. And there we have the towel photographed in shadow.
And a final little suggestion from Nissa Dark to flip the flip-flops, because he would be taking them off as he walked up to the ladder.
Flip them this way?
Yeah, so that they're facing that way.
You guys are on top of your game. Should we make them a little bit wet? No, they wouldn't have gotten wet yet, would they have? All right. I love this. I wish I had 6,000 people on every one of my photo shoots reminding me of little details. That would be amazing. All right, here we go. Are we blocked out all of our shadows?
Yeah, it looks good.
I can't see them anymore. Perfect. And this is a lot easier than setting up lighting, blocking a couple shadows. Flip the flip-flops, because he would be going into the actual pool. I think that's brilliant. Right on. Well, guys, that's the end of the photographic process. All we needed to do now is just bring this in, but we're going to not waste our client's time because we know that's going to work. It worked with a little bit of highlight on there. It's definitely going to look a lot better with shadow. So we did it, guys. It's the end of photographing day 1. Amazing job, everybody. End on a high note, sandals and a towel.
That's what I'm talking about. So that was amazing. Thank you, Aaron, for today, and thank you to everyone who was joining us from home. And a very, very big thank you to our 2 wonderful models today, Sarah and Jasper, for doing what they did. This was amazing. So let's talk about tomorrow, Aaron. I know that it's a secret exactly what we're doing, but can you talk about it in kind of broader terms?
Perfect. It is a secret. We have an amazing set build. It's the best set I've ever seen, and we're going to be on set all day tomorrow, and I really can't wait for it. We're going to be doing a different type of compositing. So today we did element compositing, and if you guys remember from earlier, I just totally made that name up. You can't look it up on Wikipedia unless someone wants to make a Wikipedia page after this tutorial, which I think they should. The compositing we're going to be doing tomorrow is frame compositing. It's going to be a little bit different. Basically, it's going to be everything that we're going to be seeing in the final image is going to be on screen, or it's actually going to be in front of the camera at one time or another. So what we're doing is we're kind of tricking a couple pieces of, we're tricking a couple things. We're tricking time. We're photographing different things at different times, and then we're going to make them look like they're in the same place at the same time. One example in which this frame compositing is used, oftentimes when you'll see, like in a music video or in a photo, if you'll see like a pretty woman standing next to a tiger, you see it a lot. I think in the Cartier ads, they had a girl with like a leopard or a tiger. What they'll do is they'll photograph the leopard or the tiger, they'll get them in frame, then get the tiger out, and then they'll bring the woman in and don't move anything around. So that's an example of frame compositing, and that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. So we're going to be pulling off some really amazing special effects. There might be some levitation going on tomorrow, which is going to be amazing, and some all-around really, really fun things going on tomorrow. So a different type of compositing in a completely different set, and it's going to be really cool.
It's going to be really, really fun, and we can't wait. Tonight, if you are not watching the rewatch, we would love for you to enter the Aaron Nace photo contest. And he is actually giving away a Phlearn Pro tutorial of your choice to one lucky winner who wins. And what you need to do is go